Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Board meeting this evening. It is Tuesday at 6 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Chairman Sean Poole.
Here.
Member Randy Stout.
Here.
Member Lori Simpson. Here. Member Joe Malin.
Here.
Member Michael Perez.
Here.
City Attorney Nancy Meyer. Here.
Okay, thank you. All right. Little in-house business first. Regarding the minutes. Do we have minutes from last meeting?
No.
No, there are no minutes from last meeting. Okay, fantastic. All right. Our city attorney is going to give the public the lowdown for how we're going to run the meeting. We're going to kind of shift the normal way we run it. And she's going to give you the procedures and how we're going to do it today, because there's a lot of people here and we want to get everybody's questions answered so we can hear what you have to say and see if we can move this along. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Instead of having public comment, what we're going to do is let the planner present her report, and then the developer will have an opportunity to present any information that they would like to present to the board. After that, we will then go into the public comment. Some of you have signed up, many of you have not. You're going to get 3 minutes apiece. You can deed your time to another person, and that person can only go to a maximum of 12 minutes. If someone's going to do that, the person that's getting that time, you need to come up with them and put your name and address on the record and indicate that you're letting them have your additional 3 minutes so they can speak longer than 3 minutes. We're flipping it around, and the idea being that once you hear from the planner and the developer, your questions may be answered, or it may trigger a question that you didn't realize you had. So we thought that might help you guys out to make sure everything that's in your mind is either clarified or the question can be asked later to make sure you understand it. With that, I think we're ready to go.
Wonderful. All right.
Alrighty, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tammy Vrana with Vrana Consulting out of Safety Harbor. I serve as the city's on-call city planner, so whenever you have a rezoning or future land use plan amendment or development review, I help out wherever I'm needed. So I'm here tonight as city staff to report on 3 different cases, case 1, case 2, and case 3, according to your agenda, and then I'll be available for questions. So the first case is a request for a text amendment to the city's comprehensive plan, and that text would be included within the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan. Let's see here. So the purpose of this public hearing is to evaluate that request to change the comp plan policy, that text, to ensure its consistency with the comprehensive plan and its impact on city growth and development, to ensure that there's public participation, opportunities for public comment, and to provide a board recommendation to the city council from the Planning and Zoning Board, and then of course to comply with all legal requirements. So the request tonight is to amend what we call the GOPs, the goals, objectives, and policies of the city's comprehensive plan, to add a new future land use category. So this is a change that would happen in the comprehensive plan. This is not zoning, this is not development review, this is a broad policy statement relative to future land uses within the city. Those land uses are exhibited on the city's future land use map. So once this text amendment, if it is approved, then it would be available as a category for use by anybody within the target area, we'll talk about later, to apply to their property. So the proposed text, but there's a little picture, and I'm not expecting you to read that, and I did make a point to go through and make everything very large font, and I appreciate that comment because it's very important. We had received an application, and that was based on that first staff report you saw with a lot of strike through and underlining that was updated back in August. Since that time, we've worked with the applicant. The city proposed some text language based on the applicant's text language, and then they counter back with some more, and we're really, really close. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present to you what the proposed text that we received last week, and I'm going to go line by line, and then I'll tell you what what the difference is between that and what another consideration that you may want to consider. So the proposed text, it's in your packet, so I don't want to go by paragraph or section. It's not too terribly long. So it states, the intent of the Cody River Landing US 19 corridor, which is the category name, that future land use designation is to enhance the unique character of a waterfront district that respects Port Richey's natural assets while integrating a mix of uses for a revitalized economic focal point along the waterfront and US Highway 19. The Cody River Landing designation capitalizes on its unique location to create a vibrant destination offering enhanced community and recreational experiences for a diverse population while leveraging the beauty and economic potential of the natural waterfront. And it goes on. The Cody River Landing US 19 corridor designation establishes the maximum residential density and non-residential development intensity to enable mixed-use development for which there is adequate public facilities, services, and infrastructure to support the maximum development potential of the land use category and additional constraints or conditions to ensure consistency with the comprehensive plan and ensure compatibility with surrounding land uses. So that's sort of the spirit of the land use category. It goes on to state that the locational characteristics is that this land use category would be applicable within an area that's shown in the land use strategy map, which would be a new map in your comprehensive plan. It identifies the locations that are appropriate to be designated with the Cody River Landing US 19 corridor on the future land use map. So this is the look at the boundary, not all my scribbles, but it's the requested location that would be applicable to the new land use category. Just doing a rough estimate of the acreage within this area is 24.66. That's using property appraisers data. If you less out the roads, which of course do not count towards your development entitlements, it comes down to 17.32 acres overall. Now, within this area, 4.92 acres and the old mobile home park are outside of the waterfront overlay district, and I bring that up only because I know that everybody's familiar with the waterfront overlay district. And then the area to the south is about 19.74 gross acres, but overall net 17.32 acres. So moving on, the second section is all properties designated with the Cody River Landing US 19 corridor land use category shall be zoned with a planned unit development district to ensure alignment with the comprehensive plan and adherence to site-specific land use and development standards. So this is a little bit of a unique thing in the comp plan, but this one does say that the city does want to have a little bit more control and to really tailor the land use regulations to these sites that would be affected. Part 3 is the following are the permitted uses and maximum levels of development within the Cody River Landing US 19 corridor land use category. The general range of uses includes retail, sales, and service, office, overnight accommodations, moderate and high-density residential, public, semi-public, and other uses as indicated in the waterfront overlay district. So referring to the work that the community's done on that zoning to make sure they're not lost. And then submerged lands are generally excluded from the density calculations when determining the development potential of the property. And then these are the permitted land uses. So there would be commercial. Actually, this is a mistake. It should be all, or I don't, does it say commercial in yours? Yours.
Mine says all uses.
All use, that's what, so I took from an old one. So it should be all uses, 2.0 floor area ratio, and then the bottom one would be multifamily residential, 60 dwelling units per acre. And I think I should stop right now and to say that dwelling units per acre is a measure of density. So it's a different type of measure than for floor area ratio, which would be buildings, measuring somewhat of the building box, so the building. So what we're proposing here, because of this being a more urban type of development, more mixed use, more vertical potentially and mixed use, is to not have those separated out where you have commercial that's FAR, floor area ratio, and you have or residential that's density, but actually you would be measuring both. The size of the box would be measured in FAR, so it would be a maximum of 2.0 floor area ratio, which is the ratio of the building to the size of the parcel that it sits on. And then within that box, you could have up to 60 dwelling units per acre. So it gives you a sense of scale. More so, the residential density doesn't really tell you, are they going to be little units or big units? So this is the last section, guiding principles. So item 4, at the time of rezoning to planned unit development district, consideration shall be given to, but not limited to, the following. And these are all of the different development-related considerations that would be handled at the PUD zoning stage. We'd look at transportation impact mitigation, vertical and or horizontal integration of uses, semi-public realm features and distribution. Those are those places that, they may be public spaces, they may be business places that are like sidewalk cafes, so it's kind of the semi-public realm. Compatibility with surrounding, existing, and planned uses, economic development objectives, interconnected street system and design standards for compact development, pedestrian and transit-oriented design principles, adequacy of existing and programmed public facilities and services such as water, sewer, stormwater, and the whole range of public services, the building placement, the orientation on the lot, the site features that strengthen the relationship between the uses and the pedestrian realm, building intensities, orientation, and massing, building massing, to promote commercial activity and create a sense of place, the placement and extent of parking, landscaping and shade treatments, protection of environmentally sensitive areas, including floodplain and buffer zones, and tree protection. So then we look at this text amendment in terms of its consistency with the comprehensive plan. So the first one is relative to the future land use policies. And I put a little check if it's consistent or a little X if it's not. This one's generally consistent because right now you don't have a category. So it's not like fully consistent, but if this is adopted, then it would be. So essentially, your comprehensive plan was, I think the first plan was probably adopted in the late 80s. It hasn't been touched too much over the years. It has a very suburban land use category mix. The land use categories are very suburban, low, moderate density. The city's adopted land use categories only support suburban scale development. If there is an interest in having something that's a little bit more urban, as what a lot of communities are doing along the Florida's Gulf Coast or coastal areas, then that could be something that this future land use category could help accomplish. So then we look at neighborhood compatibility relative to land uses. So the future land use category supports mixed uses, including residential, retail, and office uses, but the current commercial mixed use category that's applicable in that map area that I just showed you also supports these uses. It also includes some light industrial. There's manufacturing, there's some warehousing. Those types of uses would not be included in this new category. Relative to neighborhood compatibility, we look in two ways. We look, we looked at use. I guess that's the use thing before. This is the neighborhood compatibility relative to development patterns. The area around this area is, as I mentioned before, low to moderate density, low and moderate intensity commercial. The 60 units per acre that is proposed it's a big jump from what's available. Right now you can have up to 18 units per acre in those, the commercial mixed use category, and you can go up to a maximum of 0.6 floor area ratio. So for that particular reason, because the area is characterized by low to moderate intensity development and the patterns are very suburban, we'll say it's inconsistent. But we'll talk more about how that might be treated later on. So this is showing the maximum development yield of the commercial mixed-use category. As I mentioned, 18 units per acre is the maximum residential density that you can have, and the floor area ratio is a 0.6. If you can't take that gross acreage, which is going to overcalculate a little bit, you could have 443 dwelling units in that map area, or a little over 600,000 square feet of non-residential uses. By looking at what is being proposed at 60 units per acre and the 2.0 floor area ratio and that gross area, so again, it's overstating, about 1,479 dwelling units, or a little over 2 million square feet of all uses. So your building sizes would be up to, but not to exceed that amount. If we look at the net acres, the 17.32 acres, I forgot my acres up there, we show that at 60 units per acre, it would be more, just under 2,000 new residents, and 1,039 units at 1.9 persons per household would be about 1,900 residents, and then under the 18 per unit at that net density, you can see the difference. It's 312 units or 592 residents. And the box at the bottom, which you may not be able to tell, I looked at the individual zoning, although that's not part of this right now. I just wanted to get a sense of how the acreages were broken out by those different zoning categories. So it's just FYI. So we also look in relative to development patterns, consistency with a comprehensive plan. We look at planning that's been done. In the past, you're well aware that there was a couple of different intermodal district master plans that were done for the Waterfront Overlay District before it was called that. And then there was also the Waterfront Overlay District plan and zoning regulations. And also, there was recently, this past year, there was a survey effort by the city to ask residents what their opinion was. And so we take into consideration some of those considerations as far as if this proposed text amendment is consistent with the comp plan. So on to consistency relative to adequate public facilities. And these would be public facilities that are addressed in your comprehensive plan, which include, well, I'll get into that. I don't need to tell you right now. So this is where you stand today. As of, August 2024, we looked at potable water supply, your potable water facilities, your wastewater facilities, that's your sewer and your wastewater treatment plants, or, well, we'll get into that too. Solid waste, stormwater drainage, your roads, parkland, and recreational facilities. We can see in the red are those facilities that are not meeting the level of service standards today. So US 19, the city standard is level of service D in the peak hour. So if you think about from a grade from A to F, F would being worse, level of service D is the standard, but level of service F is actually how it's operating. And then also recreational facilities, bike lanes, some different types of things that you would find in a park. There are deficiencies under 4 different categories. If we include those 1,974 residents that we calculated before based on the net area, not the bigger, but this more 17-acre one, we see that so if you look at the parentheses, that means deficit. So if you see the 0.007 MGD, if all those residents moved to this area and the city needed to serve them, there wouldn't be enough water to serve them. And then potable water facilities, likewise, is also 0.11 million gallons per day deficit. Wastewater facilities are fine. I believe the city of New Port Richey, since when I worked on their comp plan years ago, I think they have built a new wastewater treatment facility in partnership with the county, and they said that they have plenty of capacity that they would be willing to take additional customers. And that this area that we're talking about is within the New Port Richey utility service area. Solid waste disposal, the city has an agreement, all local governments do within the county, for disposal at the resource recovery facility out in Shady Hills, and that's undergoing an expansion right now, so capacity should not be an issue. Stormwater management is something that's happens at permitting, so you just need to make sure that you're meeting those standards. Relative to the roads, again, we're still at LOSF. I don't know that anybody's really got a solution for US 19. The city's not generate all the traffic that goes to US 19. It comes from a lot of different places. Really what we need to do is just manage it and make it as safe as possible. The city has a proportionate fair share impact fee program so that you essentially identify what your impacts are and you pay a fee to the city to help fund projects that would mitigate traffic impacts on that facility. Parkland, you have plenty you've got 19.13 surplus acres of parkland, but still those deficiencies are still there, and of course they're made worse by additional residents. So then we look at consistency with other comprehensive plan elements. There's 9 elements in your comprehensive plan, but we look specifically at these being relevant. Housing policies, the city's comprehensive plan has an ambition for adequate housing supply and housing diversity, housing that meets the needs of local community. We feel that adding new housing to the community is in line with the city's housing policies. Relative to conservation policies, these properties have been developed in the past, and so of course there would be any sort of development review down the road to make sure that there are no additional impacts and perhaps some enhancements to the conservation resources within the community. Coastal management policies, same thing, making sure that we're building to meet the needs of a resilient city. And then finally, economic development. You know, this area of the city is within the city's community redevelopment area, and so its objective is for economic development and growth and returning revenues to the city to fund the things that the city, that the residents would like to see. So we've identified some inconsistencies. So what are the possible solutions? We've proposed some changes. So looking at the applicant's proposed text, we would take that waterfront area out of the map area, and I'll show you a picture in a second. We would lower the maximum residential units to density to 40 units per acre. That's in section 3. And also, just because we're using an all-encompassing floor area ratio standard, we would strike non-residential. That's my mistake. I should have noticed that. So we would have the maximum residential density and development intensity shall be. So this is the proposed map, and I probably should have taken a shot of the Imagine Cody River landing map. But what we had done is to kind of boundary off the waterfront area. That was waterfront 1, and then there was the US 19 area, which is essentially what you're looking at in the pink line, with the addition of the Gill Dog property that's to the east. So the little flag pole, I call it, that goes out to the water would remain in the commercial mixed use land use category, but the area in pink would be subject to the new land use category should the city decide to go forward with that. And so I'm going to skip ahead and we'll save the questions. So the next one, oops, I'm sorry. I should have attached those all together. There we go. So the next request is for an amendment of the comprehensive plan again, but this one is to the future land use map. And the applicant, is that me or you? Did I do that? Okay. Okay, very good. So these are the 2 properties that are addressed under this amendment. And the ordinance number is at the top. So, I got that ordinance wrong again. So anyway, don't look at that part. So the purpose of this public hearing is to evaluate a request to change the city's future land use map to ensure its consistency with the comprehensive plan and its impact on city growth and development, to ensure public participation, to provide a recommendation by the Planning and Zoning Board to City Council, and to comply with legal requirements. So this is a map of the subject parcel and their acreages, and you can see that the total is 3.64 acres, and those broken down are 3.37 acres that are in the top parcel, and then the bottom one is a small one at 0.24 acres. So the request is to change the designation on the future land use map from commercial mixed use, the category, to the Cody River Landing US 19 corridor, which is the proposed new category that we just discussed. So what are the key differences? The commercial mixed-use category allows up to 18 dwelling units per acre and up to a 0.6 floor area ratio. Under the proposed, the request is for 60 dwelling units per acre with a 2.0 FAR floor area ratio, and that would exclude those light industrial uses that I mentioned in the previous presentation. So what is the maximum total development allowed on the subject parcels under each of these categories? So under the current scenario, which is in place, you could achieve up to 65 dwelling units and up to 95,000 in change floor area ratio. Under the proposed, that would be 218 dwelling units or 317 and change floor area ratio, or floor area in square feet. So then we think about, is the request consistent with the comprehensive plan? So consistency with the future land use map, both allow the same mixed uses. So as we decided, or I determined in the last one, that would be consistent. Compatibility with, let's see what I got here. Oh, I got to go back now. Okay, so this is compatibility with the surrounding context, so the neighborhoods around it, relative to land uses and development patterns. We can see that the existing land uses around that, and it goes from north, south, east to west on the side, and this might be a little bit small, but I did make a copy of my report. So to the north, you've got water and the public park. To the south, you have bar, restaurant, and surface parking. To the east is a gas station and commercial, vacant commercial. And to the west is a bar, restaurant, and surface parking. The future land use categories in the area are commercial mixed use with the exception of waterfront park, which is recreation open space. And the zonings are C2 waterfront commercial on the subject parcels, also on the north and south parcels, C3 to the east and water to the west. As I mentioned before, we look at other planning. There's existing development patterns, but there's also planned development patterns. In this particular case, there is planning in the area, but it is of a more low density. It's actually what informed your waterfront overlay district. It allows up to 15 units per acre or 18 units per acre, depending on where you are. So it is quite a bit different than what's being proposed under the category. So then we look at public facilities and services availability. We know from what we just looked at before that there are some existing deficiencies, but if you're adding 218 new residents, you still have some water supply, and also your public water facilities. So there are no issues in that regard relative to just this one set of parcels. And then we look at compatibility with the other planned policies, and as I mentioned before, there was consistency relative to housing, conservation, coastal management, and economic development related policies. So what are the possible solutions to the comprehensive plan inconsistencies? So we're throwing out just some things for you to think about. If the new land use category has been recommended for approval, to consider amending the land use to the new category. So you would, by virtue of that, you would eliminate those industrial uses, that potential, and also you would have those design criteria, those things that you would need to address during zoning. So it's a little bit more specific than your normal comp plan categories. We would ask to take, you could consider taking out that little piece to the west that is west of the Gildog property and maintain that as commercial mixed use. So it just has the 12 or 18 units per acre as its maximum. And the last one is development design. In that PUD process and through a development agreement, there can be more planning that goes into making sure that things like how the impact is on adjacent neighborhoods, the road network, the facilities would all be worked out prior to a zoning approval. And that's that one. So this next one's going to go quick because it's kind of similar. So this one is for the property at 8095 US Highway 19. It is also for a future land use map amendment. The same purposes. We need to provide, public comment, get everybody's thoughts together, and then provide that recommendation to the city council by the planning and zoning board. This is the parcel. You'll see it's to the west of US 19, south of Pasco Way, total of 4.92 acres. Currently, commercial mixed-use category on the future land use map. The request is to use the new category of Cody River Landing US 19 corridor. The differences are, we said the same thing before, it's 18 units per acre today, but under the new category, it would be 60 dwelling units per acre, or the 2.0 floor area ratio. So the 4.92 acres, you would have up to, you could achieve up to 88 units today, or 128,589 square feet of commercial or non-residential development. Under the proposed, you could go up to 295 units, and then up to 428,630 for all uses. So again, that's encompassing your residential buildings as well. Same as we said before, it's consistency with the future land use map. Compatibility with surroundings is a challenge. Public facilities and services, let's go forward. I can go through this. So existing land uses around that US 19 parcel. To the north is single-family residential, multifamily residential, office, and retail. To the south is a gas station. To the east is US 19, auto sales and retail across the street. And then west is public park, bar, and restaurant. Again, the commercial mixed-use category applies, as well as the residential open space for the, and then also there's some residential that's to the, I don't know if that's correct or not, though. There might be some residential, but, and then the zoning districts that apply are the R2, two-family residential, C3 commercial, and then the C3 general commercial. Again, we look not only at existing patterns, but we look at planned patterns that have been established through the Waterfront Overlay District, and then the community survey public input that was received. So public facilities and services availability for the 218 new residents. Is that the right? I did these so fast. I want to make sure that 295. So, but you know that the city's bumping up on its threshold, its capacity for water supply and water supply facilities. And then the compatibility with the other plan policies is also found to be consistent. So what are the possible solutions to the comprehensive plan inconsistencies? If the new land use category is recommended for approval, a consideration could be amending the new category that would exclude those potential for industrial uses and require those PUD, rezoning, and site design specifics. And then also, mitigating any of the impacts that are identified through the development review process and the rezoning through the PUD zoning and the development agreement. Okay, I know I did that really quick, so hopefully with repetition, you kind of get the gist of it, but I'm happy to answer any questions whenever you need me to. You're welcome.
At this time, we're going to do quick questions after we hear from the applicant first. Is the applicant here or somebody for the applicant? Fantastic.
I apologize. I'm trying to pull up his presentation right here first.
Okay.
So how's everybody doing? It's a little awkward. It smells really good over here.
It's my first time. Next time I will. I mean, will y'all?
Ready?
I mean, I don't mind.
Okay. All right. So everyone, I think I've met a lot of folks, or at least you guys have probably heard me talk more in the last several months than you have in my lifetime here. But really, again,
You just state your name for the record first off.
Ryan Burke.
Thank you.
I live back in Harbor Point. Been back there since 2014. Again, thank you guys for the opportunity to come and speak today. I think this is an important step in the process to really help you guys understand how we're thinking about it, but also take into consideration feedback, and it's one step. I think it's one step toward the next step of how we continue to engage that feedback to refine things. We're going to walk through some different studies we've done and put together some different things at the request of several folks to help understand a number of multiples, what the city wants, and we've heard that from some of the surveys that Tammy and her team have done, what the economic impact can look like, and then what that can mean for the things that people want. And then finally, kind of looking at what are the differences in massing and density, and trying to take that away from architecture, take that away from design, and just try to give some nice comparables of what the differences are in densities and intensities. I'm going to let David, one of my, he's our architect that's been working with us diligently and patiently on this project. Let him kind of walk through the first part as it's going through some of the things that informed a lot of what he was thinking through kind of the conclusion of what we're asking for.
Great, thanks. David Krebs. And what we started with was the diagram that's up here right now is the diagram that Tammy showed also. And what we were looking at is, waterfront 1, waterfront 2, and then the 19 corridor. And what we did is went back and started and say, okay, if we looked at what those were and we looked at the comments that were made by the community, and then looking at saying how would a plan like this in concept address this? We're not showing architecture today. That's not it. That's all part of that next phase that was said, and Tammy's recommendations to say, hey, we should, when you get to that phase, let's have some idea on how we're going to handle those things so we get the architecture you want and you get the quality of the spaces you want as a future piece when it comes finally to that next phase of the PUD. But we did want to start out taking and listening to what that would look like in concept. So next one. So what we did is, and this is horribly difficult to see, so I'm going to skip to the next one. This was a snapshot of the previous one. The previous one, and everybody wants it, is in the report. It goes through and looks at all the different feedback for waterfront 1. And the idea on that is the goal on this was to basically make a walkable community, shops, restaurants, things like that would be in there. And so that comment here showing 64% appropriate was saying that's the type of things that we want to see in this project, are walkable neighborhood type restaurant shops and things like that. The next one. And going on to 19, and we go to the next one, was similar. Shops and restaurants clearly came up high. That one said, hey, maybe could be some hotel resort types of things, could be mixed use buildings, those would be compatible. Mixed use is already part of the zoning for all the properties, so those were consistent with what it was. And those uses that are in there are something that we wanted to see too as part of the property as we get into it. So those were consistent, those were things we heard. With it, and then from there we started looking at, say, if those are the pieces that we want to have, those are the pieces the community want to have, how does that affect what the project can actually be, what we could actually build to make that economically viable, to make it a walkable community, to make it a livable place. The next one. Then we got into the height, which was similar. This one talked about trying to keep it to the appropriate heights. We looked at heights in the area. We also looked at areas like San Pablo that has 5 and 6 stories next to single-family residential, so there is consistencies in the area that have higher heights mixed in with residential heights in the community as well. The next one. And similarly, 19 said maybe we could go a little higher on 19, getting away from the waterfront was the result there. Next one. And then in the planning area, they said, what do we want? You know, the bigger picture, and this goes back to that walkable community. We want sidewalks, we want outdoor cafes, markets, parks, all those types of things to be in the project. And really that's what started, you know, Ryan talked about the, you know, who they are as people, but that's actually what started the whole project was if we can have those types of things, then the project is a win as a core. So these were real consistent what we were looking for, and we wanted to make sure we were focusing on those too. Next one. So this was kind of a, in your booklet, if you grabbed one of them there, this goes through and basically just an overview of the things that we talked about there. You know, a high percentage, if we look at that sub areas there, walking, river walk, outdoor markets, pedestrian zones, sidewalk cafes, those are the core, and I think that was consistent with the original plans for the waterfront district in the first place too, and which we believe in too. The next one. So what we did on this slide then is we took a look and said, okay, if we're going to do these areas on here, which we want, the little yellow dot on there is the site area. We know we have a problem in the first place that's our win and our problem at the same point. It's a win, we're on the water, but it's also a loss because if you look at areas that people are going to be able to walk to this community from, we're basically dealing with a half a deck. We can, you know, if we go to the west, we have the water line onto there. We're limited on how many people are going to be there or will ever be there. So we know in terms of making a walkable community and getting enough density to actually be a true walkable community, we're not going to have that be what we're not going to end up any more people ever coming from the west side. So that was one of our limits. And then the red line, which is 19, we know that's a barrier also. It's a wide road that we do have to pay attention to the limits of what that road's going to end up being for us too, if we're going to make a walkable community. So site-wise, we have difficulties in getting our walkable community pieces there. The win, obviously, we're on the water, so that is a win, a positive win, but we have to play against the negatives in terms of making something that's economically viable as well as sustainable for the tenants that are going to be coming into the place, the cafes, those type of things, to make sure that they can actually stay profitable and live there. Next slide. So this one we looked at a 1 mile radius, and a 1 mile radius isn't really a walkable community. That's 20 minutes. Walkable is more in the 10-minute range. Some people might stretch that to 15. Some are at 8 minutes, but somewhere into there. We looked at this, and we can see from the picture in there we don't have a huge amount of density of residential within that density, and that's a 1 mile range, which again is not really walkable in terms of what communities call walkable. But we wanted to start there, and then the next slide we zoned into what's actually a half a mile radius. And if we take a half a mile radius and look at 19 as a barrier, the crossed out area across the other side, and then we have the river also makes another barrier, and then the areas to the west we have the water there too. So our half a mile radius of doing things that businesses that can fit into that area becomes very small very fast. And we start looking at things like coffee shop or ice cream, those kind of things. Those are walkable, very community-based things. If we were talking about things like window tinting, detailing, those type of things, those will take a bigger radius. But that's not the type of community, not the type of program that we want to have here. So we do have to be very conscious of how many people we have here. Can we get enough people to support the community, the walkable type of places that we have, knowing that we don't have them in how it exists right now. So the things we want don't really line up with what we want, how the program we want to get to. And that leads us to saying, what are our solutions to do that? Can we raise the density on the property to get more people in here to start supporting the type of activities that we want to have in the property? Next one.
I think that's a really important thing to call out. Like, as a resident here, and when we first kind of visioned this idea and saw this opportunity, the thing we wanted was one of the things we think is missing from the community, which the community has spoken and said that's what they want too. They want retail, they want more restaurants, they want more shops, they want more walkable community green space. And so, as we looked through this, it's about keeping that focus. That's what we want too. As an individual resident, my wife, my daughter, like that's what we want too. That's always been kind of our goal. So if you flip to the next slide, we wanted to jump into the economics a little bit and look at what does the city generate revenue from today, and what are the options for the city to continue to increase revenue as things continue to, people want better parks, people want better sidewalks. The water capacity issue is relevant. There's other water issues we know are out there. How does the city accomplish everything it wants to accomplish with today's situation? And what you'll see is from taxable revenue off of property taxes, your ad valorem taxes today generates about $2.5 million in revenue. There's another big pool of revenue there. A lot of those are from the businesses, from sales tax, different things. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert. We hired somebody to do all of this. But it shows where the city's at today. And then your option today of raising taxes, which that sucks. Like, just being clear, that touches every single individual in the city. But it's the only way to increase revenue in today's current situation that's very plain and simple, because there's the option every year to raise the millage a certain amount. And fortunately, it's not getting raised for next year from what I've heard. That's outstanding. If you were to raise it the maximum in a given year, it only generates an extra $380,000 of revenue for the city. It's a small percentage, but it impacts every single person in the city. It's a big impact. That's a tough pill for a lot of people to swallow. If you go to the next page, you see where is the concentration of the revenue today from those taxes. And it's kind of remarkable to see it's a very low and concentrated grouping. And so when you have a tax impact, there's certain areas that are going to be impacted the most. How can you maximize those areas? But those are also the folks that you want to make sure don't get hit too hard. And so you've got concentration risk here. If you look at the Walmart property, if Walmart were to leave, there's going to be a huge impact to the city. And so concentration risk due to lack of sources for that ad valorem taxes is something to be considered. And especially in that waterfront district, when you look at the size of it, 24 acres, was it, Tammy? 24-ish acres gross, only generating $71,000 in tax revenue today from ad valorem taxes. Flip to the next slide. So we wanted to look at what do different scales of development actually do for the revenue, just the economic impact only. And using the study that was published and put out there, that if you look at an impact of just 200 units on a development, you generate about $6.3 million in revenue in that first year. That's from a variety of sources, impact fees, taxes. There's been about $6.3 million revenue. There is a cost, and I've heard that. I've heard that from the community. Hey, what about the cost of putting this in and a fire truck and the police? It's real. It is, but the study shows that you have a net gain, a profit on that project as a city of nearly $1.7 million. Now, if you look at then annualizing that, and what they did here was they annualized based on Port Richey's actual numbers, so pulling in the public tax records, looking at that, they annualized it for Port Richey because it goes down after that first year. The first year is where you get the big impact. But still, on an annualized basis, you're increasing your revenue by $2 million. And if you just do an equal increase in cost, at a cost of about $1.4 million ongoing to support it. Those are things like supporting the water, continuing to help build the infrastructure to do that. And so a net gain of nearly $500,000, which is about what we saw on the earlier slide, which is huge, like 20% of your revenue from ad valorem taxes in one project here, and that's with 200. On the next slide, I'm going to spend no real time. This is for you all to look at and see the incremental impact of increasing that more, right? So what does that look like in terms of net profit on an annualized basis and net profit on that first year, that impact? So why this is important to me personally is the parks, is the sidewalks, is the water, is beautifying our city, making our city better than Newport Richey, make our city better than anyone around. Like, make it a beautiful place that people want to come to and want to go to and want to hang out. Make it a place that's great for families. It's great for pedestrians walking around an area. And that's what these dollars can be used for, because today you guys are doing a magnificent job managing a budget that is very tight. But when you start having excess, you can actually start investing in all the other things that are really important to a community. So as we flip from there, and we want to look at, what is the housing situation today? Based on growth patterns and based on current housing growth patterns in the area, the study suggested that there's going to be a shortage of housing somewhere in the next, I'd call it 2 to 4 years. Based on the growth in the area and looking at that over the growth in the housing market in this area. And that, to me, as a resident, is a bit of a scary thing because I think everyone knows and can read and find out about the negative impacts to the area when you have a housing shortage. And so what can be done to address that? It suggests a housing shortage of about 500 units in 2032. That seems far away. It's not that far away. So if you flip to the next slide, then something that's really important that I think we all talk about. Being a small business is hard enough. It is very challenging. Most small businesses fail. The first 10 years, over 65% of small businesses fail. How do we make it so it's not as hard for them? How can we support them? If we all collectively want more retail, more restaurants, more things going in there, how can we make sure we're not setting people up for failure and we end up with restaurants that close down, we end up with retail shops that turn over every year because that business can't stay alive? And I think that's really important when you look at it, and there's not enough good statistical data on a small business here that I can have access to or these folks can have access to. When we're dealing with a national company, they go in and they look at Starbucks development plans. What does Starbucks look at when they think about what do I need to support another Starbucks? Which 1,698 people. Domino's, same numbers. Now I can't say, I don't want a Starbucks back there. That's my personal preference. That's an opinion. It's neither here nor there. But a really neat coffee shop would be awesome, in my opinion, again. And I think there's an argument to be made that it's even harder for a small coffee shop to do it because they don't have the brand recognition. They don't have the supply chain advantages, the resource advantages. But I'd argue on the other side that maybe it's not as many for them because there's that hometown feeling, there's that brand recognition within the community, just wanting to support local business versus big chain. So maybe it's a little less than that, but either way, that's a lot of people to support one additional coffee shop and a lot of people to support one additional pizza shop. So if you go to the next slide, you say this is just, again, the area is growing. We know people are coming. We know this area is growing. So I kind of moved past that to the next slide, which then I thought was very interesting. It's where are they going or where are they going to be able to go? There's a lot of development happening in Pasco County. It's on the east side of Pasco County. They've been building and developing for this influx of people. We have something East Pasco County does not have. We have a beautiful waterfront. They don't get that advantage yet. They're developing and drawing people there. And so we can get people to this community, generate more revenue for the city to help fix things that need fixing, and at the same time, get what we all want, which is more of the retail, walkable community, restaurants, shops. We can do that. But we can't do it within the restrictions that exist today. And that's what our goal is. We want to support what the community wants, but do so in a way that we can support the businesses. The small businesses are struggling today. There are small businesses really struggling back in that same area. This would help them and allow us to expand beyond that. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to turn it back over to David because this is, again, back in his area of expertise.
Good. So when we started looking at the spaces itself, this is not meant to be a plan by anything of what we're trying to do. We just started looking at it and thinking, if you were to do something here, what it's going to come down to is the architecture and the character and the PUD when the design process goes through, what the expectations are you're going to try to figure out how to get out of that to get the quality of the spaces you want. And next slide. And the reason why I brought this up is because here's an example here. You could come in, build a multi-story building, put it right up against the road, and we'd end up with a space that would be I'll say maybe not the space that we'd want to have as a city. We could end up with a tall building, and just by rezoning it and putting the zoning category in it, you could end up with that. To Tammy's point, when she's talked about trying to say, hey, can we start to then use design as a way to start changing the narrative of what the quality of the spaces we're going to, that's what we're after. And the design side and the architecture side, that's what I'm interested in, is creating places where people want to be. We didn't put this up to say we want to do this. We put this to say, if you just broadly said, hey, this is good, let's go ahead and go with this, somebody might do that. That was not, that we don't want that to happen. But if you looked at what happens in the next phase of the project, that's what we wanted. That's what we started to focus on. So the next slide here is saying when you start to step the building back, for example, make the street level where you have cafe, we have awnings and signs, and it's really the section of the street, from the street to the parking area to the landscape to the awnings to the signage and in through it. That's what we're after, is how do we start creating those spaces that you want to have. That's where the discussion really would start to turn in the next phase. So let's make sure we're getting those types of things happening. Whether we're going down a street, how we address the north end, which is probably the most critical in terms of adjacent to something with the residential. That we're addressing that. As we go down 19, it starts changing. We're not as adjacent to residential, which is usually one of the biggest concerns when we get into projects, is how we're abutting residential areas. The rest of it doesn't abut residential as much. But the same, we still want to make sure we get that experience that people have, that walkable community and experience, but yet can still make the density of people we want to achieve the goals to make it financially feasible for the tenants that are going to be in here. Next one. And again, this would be something on the waterfront. You could do that on the waterfront, which makes a boardwalk, but then you could end up with spaces on it, or the next slide. Or we could start doing things where we start stepping it back, changing the scale and changing the what the user experience would be on it. And that's where the project starts to sing, and that's where the magic happens for in our world on the design. Next one. So then we started looking at saying, what's the quantifiable difference between, say, a 40 and a 60 unit project? And really, for us, it came down to, again, it's going to be the density it's going to be how the project is massed and the scale of the project. We could do a horribly dense 40 unit, bad for the area, 40 density, or we could do something that does 60 density that becomes, basically unnoticeable or even less impactful as we come along. So there's a couple images just saying, hey, the building types between how you mass it, how you step it. Next slide. And how you move around. These are just different views of the same. And again, we're not saying this is the building by any means at all. This was specifically meant to be very, very generic in massing. No character, not about the detail, not about the character. We know we want to match the goals of the city in those areas. Next one. And then the next one. Again, when you look at 40 to 60, again, there's each one of these had 40 to 60s on them. That's not a noticeable difference based on how you mass it. Next one. And then as we're coming down the road, the top image there was how we did a conceptual idea on the plan. The top one is at 40 units. The bottom one is at 60 units. Again, coming down 19, looking back at the property on 19. Showing again is how you densify it is going to be the difference, but really there's nothing noticeable difference between the two. Next. Same thing as we get a little bit more into the project and looking at that's the difference between 40 and 60, the same thing. Next one. Same thing, 40 and 60 again as we come around. And the next one. Again, coming down the street, again, depending on how you step it, you could get to where you can see something or not see something. Again, that'll all come out in the architecture, and we get into it in the projects. Your request to go through with the architecture, should be doing sections, should be doing 3D images, view line, view corridors, all those things should be as a requirement of the next phase of the project. Next. Again, looking down and in, again, it's all going to be in the architecture and the character and the massing. Again, looking at 40 versus 60. And then the waterfront, again, we showed you a section earlier how we could go to the waterfront. We could do, potentially someone come in and do a tall building right along the edge, or are we pulling it back? One of the things that the density or the floor area ratios, whichever way ends up going, allows us to do is we can pull back. We can make wider sidewalks. We can make wider pavilions. We can do outdoor areas, eating areas, and those kind of spaces. And that's what we want to do. We want to try to make those public spaces, give them back to the community. That's very private right now, and a lot of the waterfront is private right now. We want to make that as public as possible. And in doing that, going a little bit taller to be able to do that, that allows us to meet the density requirements and access the spaces where people are going to be, their view lines, or where people are going to be standing and what you're actually seeing. Next one. That it?
And so I think the key that David brought up that we want to make sure is extremely clear here is this: we are not talking about any type of government subsidized or low-income housing. We are not talking about trying to put something in that isn't very thoughtful of what the community wants and thoughtful of being pedestrian friendly. We are thinking about how do we support the businesses that go in there. But I think, most importantly is what we've proposed is not giving us this free rein to go do something. What it's doing is it's requiring an extra step, and that's why we decided that the PUD concept was in the best interest of the city and its residents. Is it requires another step of us coming to a design concept, coming to something we do that makes the most sense for the city, that we can't just go put something in. There are some protections in there around design, a development agreement, committing to that. And we felt that was really important, my wife and I as residents, because you could do this and the reality is something could happen to us tomorrow. I don't know. And then the next person comes in and doesn't want to be as cooperative, doesn't want to work with the city. And we didn't want that because we want this place to be a walkable community with all of those things that we discussed. We just want that to be sustainable and sustainable long-term for the city. So that's our presentation. Happy to answer any questions you guys have.
So before I open to the public, I'll ask the board if they have any questions for the applicant. I'll start to my left. Mr. Malin.
Start to the right.
All right, fine. Well, let's start with Mr. Perez.
I don't know that they're specifically to you. I think there's some questions for you and for us to discuss about
Sure.
the verbiage in the amendment. But speaking to your point, making sure that we're taking this step so that you can take your next step, but not overstepping, not creating a problem for the city that lets something run away. There's a handful of things in there that we need to talk about. I forget we'll get to that note when we get there about where that could be used, where this density could be used elsewhere in the city if we aren't careful about how we do it. No, I mean, specifically to your plan, I think, obviously everybody's excited to see what you can do, but we need to get through this hurdle first and make sure that we're doing it intelligently.
And my question is,
No, it's not. Not at all. We have a pretty high intensity of commercial, retail, restaurants. I think we have accounted for the square footage of that. It's not. It's not at all. Like every single thing we have just talked about has an incorporation of retail, restaurant, parking consideration. It is not at all residential.
So if you look at the first paragraph of the text amendment, it indicates what the intention is, what the purpose is of this future land use category, and it specifically states mixed uses. So that's something that we would definitely look at during any sort of PUD rezoning to understand what the mix is. I think it's one of the stipulated section 4 at the bottom where we talk about the mix of land uses. So if the intent is for a mixed-use environment, which very, very clearly the community wants to have those sort of that downtown environment, that would be I think a very important consideration during the PUD. But is there something that says you have to do this much?
Anything other than residential?
All I can say is right now, we're just looking at this sort of, the box size and then how much residential so we can determine impact on public facilities. So we haven't got into ratios as far as this comp plan amendment, but I guess you guys can answer what,
assure you-
we have heard,
That has been a
yeah, go ahead.
key piece of the project. I want a place to go. It's been a key piece of the project.
And on the architecture side, that's the first thing they said to us. I want a place I can go to eat. I want a place I can go to walk. I want to go get coffee. I want to go have ice cream. That is the driver first. In order to make that sustainable, that's where the other parts of the project came along. It's how do we make those sustainable for a long time? So it's not somebody, and that's where the density comes out of. Can we make those things sustainable? But yeah, it's our goal, and 100% was to bring in the mixed use to be compatible with what the city's goals are.
Yeah, and it was the key to doing it within the PUD, requiring, having that mixed use in there and creating that ability to do both. But Tammy, anything you'd add?
So I will let you know that under your commercial mixed-use category that you have in the books today, it talks about retail, office, and residential. And it has targets like 50% commercial and 25% residential. There are those things, but they really don't end up being used. I think really the onus on the public space, commercial accessibility is going to happen during the PUD. I mean, we can put some targets in there loosely, but you can't really create standards because you don't know what the needs are of that particular location. You don't want to create commercial on a side of a building that nobody's really walking by. But you do want to have it on those places, those pedestrian aisles where people are interacting. We call them activated spaces. So you want to make sure that you're putting the commercial where it's going to be viable, but there's no intention of, at least from this text amendment, to saying that it has to be single use. And so if you think that that needs to be stronger, that it's a mixed use, we could always look at being more explicit.
Well, it just sounds like right now we're not considering their project then. We're just talking about the whole district. Is that right?
The comp plan, it's a policy, so we're creating a category under which this type of development could occur at the density and intensity levels that would make it viable, whatever that is. And then that would be the first step. So you have to have a place for this type of a project to live within your comprehensive plan. And then next would be the details. How much commercial? What are the traffic generation? What are the width of the sidewalks need to be? How many shade trees? I mean, it really gets, in a PUD, you can be very, as you know, you've seen plenty of those where it gets very specific. It's not just a regular zoning where you come in and it's just what the standards are in the zoning code. This is open to tailoring whatever the needs are of that site that's in the spirit of what's written in the future land use category. That's the way I look at it anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Lori?
Tammy, I think last time you said, as far as comparison, that the county was 27 per acre, units per acre, and Newport Richey was 30, and I think you said Tarpon Springs was 40.
40. So I have done a little bit of research. I do know that I had to go back in and look at council agendas in Newport Richey. There is a small area within the downtown core that they do allow up to 60 with transfer development rights. So I believe now it's at maybe this, the area by the McGurn building. What's the mixed use building downtown? I believe that's the downtown core where they're anticipating something up to 60 with performance. You have to do something to get that. What I've learned too from Pasco County is that they are they have a lot of land use categories. So they're consolidating them and trying to figure out how to make their future land use map a little bit more logical and manageable. They are looking at something between a 12 and a 60, but where that 60 goes is probably going to be more in employment centers, more in maybe in the Moffett area, but they're still early in their process. But right now they do not have a 60 unit per acre that I'm aware of. I did speak with the planner who's updating the comp plan.
And the applicant was originally wanting 60, but now they're willing to go to 40.
So the applicant initially wanted to have 60, and they're still requesting 60. We decided that for the floor area ratio, which is currently 0.6. The applicant asked for 1, but because this is a vertical, more of a vertical development, where you're going to have residential and commercial in the same, when you do residential density and you measure that, and then you're measuring floor area ratio, it's like apples to oranges. It's very hard to visualize. But what we can do is if we do floor area ratio, we can understand what's the size of the box on a particular property. You can see those diagrams that are in the staff report. And then we can also understand how many residential units, because we want to know how much water to provide, and we want to know how many park facilities we need to have. So you need to have a sense of what is the population, potential population of these areas, and that's what density gives you. Also, in the past, the state has always kind of required that you show some density. You can do the measures however you want, but they kind of want to know when you're estimating traffic, you need to know how many units, because that tells you how many people, and it tells you about behavior.
Okay. And on this slide, did you show an area of the south side of 19 for future reference? Did I see that one there?
South side of 19.
Like where the marinas are and the
No, this is the
like Sunset Landing Marina and that.
that's part of the area we're talking about for the PUD.
Okay, but there wasn't an area on there that you showed on that slide that shows that area
Now,
for future
really
reference.
just the two parcels, the
Yeah, we're,
5 acre and 3+ acre lots.
that we showed up.
But I'll tell you that the text amendment applies to a map area.
Right.
So it's either the full map area or the abbreviated one, but you're right, the future land use map requests are for those specific parcels that you see.
Because the name Cody River Landing was supposed to include like over by Shark Bites and Hooters and everywhere, not just
Yeah, so what we're,
there.
so the kind of the idea of, because during the Imagine Cody River Landing, we had those 3 areas. So we had something that was a little bit more US 19 focused, probably more intensity, more, just more intensity along that corridor versus what would happen in the Waterfront 1 area.
Yeah, because that was the name to replace the Waterfront Overlay District, not just that one area.
I'm sorry, I didn't
It
follow.
was supposed to replace Cody River Landing was selected to cover the whole area, like.
Yeah, so we selected a planning area because we thought that, all these areas kind of support each other. So we could look just at the Cody River Landing, which is a thing, a place, but we could also look at what's going on east of US 19. We could look at what's going on a little further up, because all of that, as you saw from the map, that kind of cordoned everything off, you're very isolated over here. US 19 is a giant barrier. Nobody's going to walk across it if they don't have to. They might have a light that you can get across. You can't cross the river on foot. So some of these other areas could also be created into very walkable places or bikeable to where they can be customer base in Cody River Landing or anywhere within that planning area. But it really is kind of looking at that there's a redevelopment need within that whole
I
area.
know another thing that we've mentioned with the city is we really wanted to have an area for overpass, either overpass or underpass, like under the bridge. Of course, they wanted to make it golf cart accessible, and the county was actually looking at doing something about that earlier, and we missed but they were still kind of renegotiating maybe down the line.
So one of the things that you'll see in the text are all those considerations, including but not limited to, and it looks at circulation. So and it's not just car circulation, it's bike and ped and, it's whatever circulation is that the community wants to have out there. But those are details that would get into during.
Because I'll see these walkway overpasses way out and where there's nobody, and we have the highest fatality in this area of pedestrians, so we really need that.
Yep, I agree.
I think that's all I had. That's it.
And also for clarity, the reason for the 60 is we originally had put in a cap in the whole area, and we shrunk the area down, and the cap didn't make sense anymore. The cap was to protect exactly, I think everyone is concerned about, that I would be concerned about too, is, okay, if you do 60 and then everyone comes in and puts 60 on every single parcel, it creates a lot of density. So we had originally proposed a cap can be used. When we shrunk it down, the cap wasn't applicable. We asked for a max to create flexibility so that we can do more residential the water, more residential on 19, get less dense but more intense with retail, shopping, pedestrian area along the water. But creating a ceiling is all there is. Then we're hoping through the PUD process, we can actually come to what makes a lot of sense and works for the city to get a development agreement done to move forward. So we're just putting a ceiling in per acre, but there's no intention to put 60 on each acre we have back there. It's to create the flexibility to do so in areas where it makes sense and not do so and scale back in areas where we want to scale back and the city wants to scale back.
And just another note on the overall density of the whole property, would be 24 acres or was it 17 point, whatever, acres when you look at your net acres. There's things like Catches isn't going to be leaving. It's strong business. It looks great. So that, there's things already out there that maximum density is shown will never happen anyways.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of good business there. There's some good businesses in there that aren't going to be going anywhere either. And when you take the roads out and everything like that, that drops it back. It drops it back pretty fast. So when we looked at the water, do these projects, water's fine, and some of those ones can be fine. For this project, over time, if somebody did that, tore down Catches and started to go bigger, then you could have a problem, but that's not really realistic, that would be the case, to take down a new building that has a strong business in that way.
Okay. I've got a few questions. Just want to know what the mindset is. If it's responsible, and there may be new people coming into the area, why do you think Port Richey has to accommodate all these new people coming into the area? You already said that there's east side developments and things, and so why do you think that the city of Port Richey, who's already made the comments that they don't want to have their bedroom type community torn down and replaced with large high rises, St. Pete's, Indian Rocks Beach?
Yeah, happy to address that. I stress again, we have never played high rises. Anyone looks at the costs of doing high rise, it's extremely cost prohibitive. We've never contemplated high rise. We've contemplated, hey, if we can do more retail on the bottom, get structured parking to free up more like using green space for actual good green space versus parking cars on it. We could go a floor higher, maybe two, than what exists elsewhere in the community to accommodate some parking and some more retail and mixed use and commercial as an idea. That was where we were on that. Why do I think that the city needs to accommodate the people coming in? I think there's plenty that will show you that when you don't accommodate with housing for people coming to the area, you end up with increased crime, you end up with increased, you end up with things you don't want here. And I think most importantly, I think it's because I want to support small businesses that are out here. I want us to have things that people want to go to. Now that's my opinion. It's not my opinion. I want to do something that can support small business owners, support some of the great things we have here today, like Catches, Whiskey Joe's, Robert's Barbecue. I want to support those. Those businesses struggle with what we have today. I had a great lunch the other day, and our waitress came up to us. The first thing he said to her was rather very polite and said, "Hey, how's your day going?" We said, "Well, it's a weekday, so really, really slow." That's really tough for businesses to deal with. We have a big population of folks that are snowbirds, that are here part of the year, gone part of the year. That makes it additionally tougher. So if we can accommodate those people, put them into really nice places, and bring good people to the area, hardworking people to the area, and support the businesses, that's why I think we should accommodate them.
Okay. On the current economic outlook, it's got for 24-25 a 7.53% increase.
No, it's the millage rate. That's the max allowed, is a 1.
But that's not what City Council is looking at. They're looking at a 6 point something, which makes all these.
Oh, correct.
It makes all these figures incorrect.
No, it doesn't. What we're saying is if the city someday did what they're not doing, they're not raising taxes. But within the statute, they're allowed to. So this analyst look at how much more revenue could you in theory generate if you raise the millage rate by a full point. You guys aren't doing that. We were just, that he was showing what impact that could have on your total revenue, and it's not a big amount. It's not. That's all that was showing.
Well, why didn't the analysts look at what they're actually going to do instead of,
It was a study to look at potential revenue sources for the city.
yeah, but you know, potential is wish in one hand, hope in the other. Neither one may come to pass on this.
Right, and if it stays the same, you're looking at the left column. Is that I sent what I point you to? The left column is it's staying exactly the same. If you go below that, then it'll go down from there. The revenue to the city will go down from there.
Okay, and then it's been stated before that the housing market would be stagnant or we'd be losing. So if the city is really desirable as the older folks or people that get job transfers sell out, then the price of the property goes up. So that means the price of the taxes go up. That was never taken to account in this. You make it sound like, oh my gosh, if we do all this stuff, then you know you won't have a shortfall. And if I'm saying that if we have a city that looks, you know, like it's a very desirable city, then that's not going to happen anyway. There's more people moving out of Largo, St. Pete's, and all those places down there because they don't like the looks of it. They don't like the crime that's already been impacted, and they're moving up here. And now it seems that your company wants to put the same thing in up here that they've had down there. And so where are the people going to go next? Because they want waterfront and they want to see that, you know, and even the pictures that you've got. Mayor Hoover, in particular, and the city council argued for having picket fences that you could actually see through where you could see the waterfront. You're not going to see the waterfront through this.
That is not a design. It was, as pointed out, it was just to show scale and massing.
Okay.
To show scale and massing and to really show how you can be really creative and how you do that to make it so that you step it back. You don't make it as tall in places where it can really impact a person's view. It doesn't contemplate the open spaces between those, and it's to create a comparison of the difference between 40 and 60 units and the difference between building to support that density very smart and responsibly versus building to support that density maybe in a much less expensive way, but really creates something people don't want to see and can block. And there's nothing in the current code today that would restrict someone from building irresponsibly up to 72 feet and blocking that waterfront. I live here. I want this to be a place that I can go to. I want it to be a place all of our residents can enjoy. I want it to support the businesses that we want more of. And so that is the goal of increasing the density. I can't speculate on where people will move after they move here if it's not good, but I can tell you if we don't do it well and do it right, it's a lot harder to keep people here. And so part of us really working with Tammy and the city was coming up with a strategy that would ensure that we have to do it responsibly, that we have to be smart about it.
More comment?
Yeah.
So one more comment on the waterfront. The difference on what we're trying to do is we're actually trying to step the buildings back away and give access and make a boardwalk along the waterfront. If you look at some of the restaurants that are on there, they make it, you have to pay to go into their deck to see the waterfront. We're trying to flip that around where our stuff is back away from the waterfront and you're actually walking along the waterfront. That doesn't exist right now. That's what we're proposing to do.
So the boardwalk along the waterfront, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Stops at Whiskey Joe's because they're not going to let you screw up their beach with their boardwalk.
Only do what we can control, and we do everything we can control, and ideally in the future as things come, they will do the same thing. We can only do what we can do, and at least we can give people access to the part that we can control, and that's our starting point, is to do the things we can do. We can't control other things that have already been done. Those are past, but things that come in the future, ideally, they could access that, have that, and maybe eventually some things will connect along. And that could, in an ideal world, that waterfront would go all the way around the whole thing. If what we're proposing, let's start with at least the parcels that we can control, and let's get the waterfront on there so people can walk on it.
And I would argue that I think most of the businesses would really support doing something creative. I mean, it's not going across their beach. It's going in front, but most businesses would really appreciate more pedestrian traffic walking by their place, because then people stop in for a beer. People stop in to have a quick bite to eat. So we can't control that today, but what we can do is commit that our plan is to move things back off the water to create the pedestrian side on the waterfront, where people want to be on the waterfront and want to enjoy the views that they get from there. And that's, we want to work with the city very closely on this.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from on that, but you're going to, if your boardwalk stops after 100 feet when it gets to Whiskey Joe's, and that's what the sidewalks are for. And I don't think Whiskey Joe's is just going to sell out to anyone just so you can extend the boardwalk down to the beach, because that, first of all, will destroy part of the value of the property down there to begin with. People don't go down there so they can sit out in the parking lot and drink beer. They go down there to eat dinner, have drinks, and look out at that small sand beach out into the bayou.
Agreed, but I can't speculate on what that will happen. We're pretty far away from there. We're saying on parts we control, we would want to put public access along the waterfront. On the parcels we control today, or don't control today, what we're looking to do with Eric on his properties, we're able to close on, make sense. I cannot predict what will happen beyond that, but what I can commit is we're thinking about those things. We're thinking about how do we pull it off the water to create more public access. Those are our considerations and why we want this in a PUD, to where we can really be smart about maximizing that.
So then, why do you want to split out the floor area ratio from where it is now, so you can have all floor area ratio?
Yeah, okay, there we go. So that was probably my doing, because it's very difficult to measure residential density, one type of measure, versus floor area, which is another. If you want to have a sense of scale, put everything into a floor area ratio and decide how much of that can actually be residential. And so
I don't think that would open up to abuse.
it's pretty typical in more vertically arranged buildings. We've been in a very suburban environment. I grew up in this area. I've watched it change over time. Everything's single use and separated. It's not working together. That's why we have to get into our cars to go everywhere. But if we have those places like downtown Newport Richey or downtown Tarpon Springs or St. Petersburg, where you can actually park your car, get out and walk, and so those buildings actually become part of the frame by which you create pedestrian spaces. So, certainly design, scale, all that's very important and it needs to be figured out thoughtfully. But the way we're thinking about it now is that I thought that the floor area ratio would give you a better sense of the certainty of what could be built there. Because if you just do residential and you just do commercial, density and floor area ratio for commercial, you don't really get a sense of what the scale is going to be. Because density can be big units or smaller units. They can be, so this way it gives you a sense of certainty with what the massing is going to be of buildings on a parcel.
Okay.
I thought it was a good thing, but I'm willing to be convinced
and
otherwise.
That's your opinion. That's not fact, correct?
Well, it's something that's pretty typical in urban, more vertical, mixed-use environments. The city of Clearwater just did all of the US 19 corridor with only FAR. They're not even regulating density at all. They just have FAR.
Okay, and do you not think that also that framework that you put up for parking garages and mixed use is not going to block off the view and make it feel more isolated in the walking community when they walk down there and says, oh, gee, how do you get in there? Where you can't.
So as a planner, I would say that in this juncture, we're only giving sort of the frame, the maximum. What actually happens in that, and I think throughout the staff report, you'll see, what's actually achievable is depending on many regulations, your zoning. There's a lot of standards that come into play as to what you can actually build.
we look at the maximum relative to the future land use map and this category because we want to be able to assess impacts to public facilities and also to neighborhood compatibility and things like that. But the comprehensive plan is a growth management tool, but it also relates to community design. So it's all important, but we do need to have like a ceiling. We're setting a ceiling now, a responsible ceiling in an area. So it's, location and extent and intensity. And then later on with zoning, with this PUD, it's even more control for the city that you could actually create those standards that are needed for a particular site. So here's a particular site. It has these types of uses around it. It's on the water. It's on the US 19. The design standards that go into that site would be very different from, say, an internal block or internal parcel on a block within maybe Cody River Landing. I don't know, but this allows a tailored design approach, which as a planner, as a professional planner, I think is more ideal than the uncertainty of what you just get with regular zoning.
Okay.
Because that'll give you everything that you see up and down US 19 that we've been trying to address for decades.
Okay. In one of your slides said that there was enough water, to support this. Hold on.
Okay, well,
According to the City of Port Richey council minutes, and this goes back, 3, 4, 5 years, it said we're at 83%. Now, adding another 1,000 residents, and we're only a city of touch over 3,000, that's 25%. If you take 25% and add that to the 85% that we're already at, then we don't have enough water to accommodate these folks.
so the way that my analysis of the entire area, which is looking at every parcel redeveloped, every parcel came in, it produced residential units, that there was a certain number. I don't have it in front of me right now. Under that scenario where all the parcels within this map area would develop, you would exceed your water supply under your water use permit with the state, and you would also exceed your infrastructure, your wastewater, or your water treatment plant. What we're showing is that with these individual future land use map amendments, you do fall shy. Now, whether or not you have, you should be working on additional supply and working on additional facilities, which I think that the city is working on right now. But you're right, you would be in a deficit position if all those residential units came to fruition in this area. Right now, with those individual parcels, I believe it's falling short of, but it's right there at the tippy top. So it's definitely something that the city is working on right now.
Okay, and also touched on the traffic control, in that area. You bring in that many people, we're looking at anywhere between 800 and 1,900 cars. Where do you put them all?
You mean on the travel lanes?
Yeah.
So
Because I'll tell you right now, Old Post Road will be the highway to Walmart. And for all of the folks that live down Old Post Road, they won't be able to get into their area where they live. They won't be able to get out of the area where they live. The speed limits needs to be adjusted, and on top of that, to really accommodate an older residents, for the Quist side to the east of Old Post Road, and then the other residents to the west of Old Post Road, that needs to be blocked off. One way stops just short of the city park. That's not been addressed.
Right. I agree. Your street network is, it's actually very quaint, but it's right. It's a lot of 2-lane. There's ditches on the side. You can't necessarily build sidewalks or bike car, but it doesn't mean that it can't be done. And I believe the city is working on a comprehensive safety action plan right now that could come up with recommendations during this design process that you would go through with the PUD. Those things will be worked out. You'd have to be able to mitigate for the impacts. And then relative to a development like this, which is kind of a live, work, play potentially. You could essentially come home, park your car, and then you don't have to drive out for the next weekend, or people are working at home. Mixed use developments have more internal capture. They don't necessarily drive as much. There's international traffic engineer models that show what the estimated peak hour demand is for different development types, and they're typically less for mixed use developments. Now, if you have a big mixed use development, it's creating a lot of traffic, a lot of trips on the network, and you don't have the infrastructure to support it, yes, you would have a problem. Those are things that need to be determined. At this particular point in time, this future land use category and also the future land use map amendments are not entitlements. They are just the ceiling. It's something that we use for planning for the future. It's not zoning, so it doesn't get into that precise detail as what could actually be accomplished. Now, granted, you want to be responsible about what level you set. I think that should be rational and reasonable. But right now, we're not really solving for the traffic problem. There is a problem. US 19 is terrible. But sometimes congestion is the reason why people don't get back in their car and they just take the opportunity to walk in their walkable neighborhood.
And I'd argue that the plan here shouldn't just mitigate the traffic concerns of bringing those many residents in. It should improve the traffic that exists today with the existing residents, because today it's not very good. Today, I don't feel safe having myself walking down or riding a bike down the sidewalk of many roads here. This plan, whatever plan happens in this PUD, it shouldn't just mitigate for the additional people. It should turn it into a better and safer state than exists today for today's existing people. It should improve that. And that's the standard I would expect the city to hold us to in doing this project, is not just to mitigate, improve.
Okay, well, I can see the improvement coming from an extra couple lanes. Where does your group see that coming from?
I don't know, we're not there yet. We've looked at different road infrastructure, we look at different ways to route traffic to make it safer.
So let me slow this down. Let's slow this process down. I think there's a disconnect that's in the process here. The applicant, just for the residents, for the board, myself, everybody understand, the applicant is just starting the first phase of the process. Our job now is to figure out where he can go. What's the maximum? What's the ceiling? That's how Kevin put it, right? And I understand they're all very viable questions you have. The secondary part of this, once we figure out what we're willing to recommend to the council to do, because we don't make that decision, council does, obviously, is then he will have to go through an actual process. Plan unit development process is a very, 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 very rigorous process. As you know, you've been through them with me. So they have to go through everything from how wide you want the sidewalks, how many trees you want, everything you can manage that entire process during that phase. But here at this phase we're at now, I don't want us to, lose the tree in the forest, so to speak. You know what I mean? So we've got to focus on what we have now. And Joe, you have some very valid points that needs to be addressed. And many of the residents have the same concerns, right? But at the same time, I think we're answering the same questions over and again. Correct? Am I wrong? Yeah, absolutely. Please.
And I had the same question at the town hall. And I asked the mayor to go over it. We went over it in detail at the town hall that we had not too long ago. What we're doing right now with this amendment is effectively creating the box that the future can go in. They can't play with the box yet. They can't put anything in the box yet. We're just saying how big the box is. And then once we set that parameter, then they can develop a plan up to that and come into the city and discuss it with us and the residents in a town hall type setting to go through that entire PUD development setup once we set the parameters for what the ceiling is. So yes, it sounds like if you took all of these numbers to their absolute maximum, that would be awful. We'd have giant 100-foot tall boxes built to the edge of the road, all the way down, and we would wipe out our water, we would wipe out all of our infrastructure. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is this is the frame that can be built within. Now, come to us with a plan, and let's talk about what it looks like. And the citizens are involved in that. P&Z's involved in that. Council's involved in that. That's where we get to ask for performance. We get to ask for, okay, you want to do this, you want to get to this density, you want to do these things, that sounds great. We want you to build these 3 roads, these 4 things. That's how the county does Starkey, and then makes the developer build parks and all sorts of other things, right? This is part of the process. All we're doing right now is developing a potential ceiling, because right now, if we don't do this, then like I could go buy the old trailer park, and based on the 0.6 right now, I can build a 5,000 by 5,000 foot 5-story building right along Old Post Road, and it'll meet the 0.6 that we're at right now. It'll let me get where I need to get, and it'll be a queue sitting in the middle of that. And there's nothing that the city can do about that, because that's just zoning right now. I can just use the zoning that's here right now and build to the maximum capacity.
And granted, you can do that. But they want to change everything down there from a C2 to a C3, and that means that they can build the max everywhere.
But they
All right,
can't.
let's stop in the internal side of it. So we have some other business to manage from that standpoint. I personally, and I think the board as well, would like to hear from the public now.
Yes.
So I have 5 individuals. Thank you, gentlemen. I'm sure you'll be back up. So we have 4 individuals who signed the sheet. I am sure there are others. I saw one particular person walk in here that I'm sure wants to speak. So let me start with the people that are on the list. I believe is that Don Hernandez?
Don?
Is that Mr. Hernandez?
Yes, that is I. Don Hernandez, 8425 Flaxen. Thank you for taking this time to come to this. I know you're volunteers and you're doing this as a service to the people of your neighbors. What you said was absolutely true. We talk about a walking community. Ridge Road and 19 is probably one of the top 10, if not top 5, worst traffic spots in the world. What I see, and I am probably the most conservative pro-business, was in buildings and everything back before I retired. And if I could build it 100-story in a residential area, I could if I was allowed to, because I want to make a profit. That's what these people are here for, to make a profit. That's their job to them, and they're stockholders. But we do know what the state of Florida will say about 19. I looked at it. What is their plans for 19 through Port Richey? If I was living, if I was walking or getting in my car at the sign at New Port Richey and had to go to Home Depot up on 19, how long would it take to get there on a Friday afternoon? Are we going to turn into another Wesley Chapel Trinity in 75, where they had to spend, what, millions and millions that took 20 years to build? We don't have the space. You talk about a walking community, anybody on east of 19, you can't even take a golf cart over there because the city can't decide how to do it, because they're saying it's not safe. How is this going to be safe for the people who wants to be part of a walking community? There's not going to be a walking community. They're going to get in their car, they're going to sit on Ridge Road, and they're saying, screw it, I'm not going to go to Walmart, I'm not going to go to Catches, I'm just going to say, when my relatives come down from up north, I'll show them the water, we'll go on Tuesday morning when everybody's at work. What doctor would go down there? What ice cream store would go down there? You have to be able to get the business there, and the business will come from 19. That's just a natural way. That's how businesses need, in this particular case, the car traffic. The city can't even decide whether or not to, right now, how we can take a golf cart over there to go to Catches, to go to the other restaurants. I understand. I mean, these things look beautiful, but they're really not telling us anything. You said about the water. We need a pump, and we need to find out from the state of Florida what they're going to do with 19.
Thank you, sir.
Those things we do know. Those things are on file, and we should know that. You should know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Jen Cook.
Jen Cook, 4529 Harbor Point Drive. Over the past 18 months, I've witnessed a lot of confusion amongst a few residents in this community. We know that social media has made it challenging to sort through opinions versus facts, and we've seen that again here this evening. As an engineer by degree and an orthopedic surgeon by career, while I understand opinion is important when making decisions for the benefit of a community, it is imperative to have the correct facts. It can be easy to misconstrue pictures, texts, and words. I would like to express a few opinions about our community and contrast them with facts. It is my opinion that the sidewalks on Bay Boulevard are unsafe for anyone to use, and that it is probably safer to walk in the street. It is my opinion that these need to be fixed for the safety of our residents. It is my opinion that the flooding that occurs on Bay Boulevard with nearly every rainstorm needs to be fixed for the safety of our community as well. It is my opinion that we have a wonderful waterfront area that in its current state is falling apart and an embarrassment for our lovely community. Now let's talk about some actual facts. It is a fact that the waterfront area has had plans for redevelopment for over 20 years. It is a fact that no developer was both willing and allowed to develop the area. It is a fact that we have a group that lives in the community that is willing to put up their own money to invest in bettering our community. It is a fact that the proposed project never contemplated high rises, despite the signs that have been posted on Bay Boulevard with the QR code. In fact, the highest proposed structure was only 1 to 2 stories taller than the current residences in the city, specifically Sand Pebble. It is a fact that the proposed project never contemplated low-income housing or government-subsidized housing. The term affordable housing was used to imply that residents would not all be multi-million-dollar condos. The verbiage was misinterpreted. It is a fact that there is a significant need for upgrades or replacement of our city's current water system. A major rebuild of the water system would force the city to seek alternate funding sources or outsource the water supply. It is a fact that a change in density was proposed to allow for retail, restaurants, entertainment, and to fix the parking problem. It is a fact that by increasing the density, tax revenue will be increased. It is a fact that the city has very little margin on the revenue it generates today. It is a fact that if the city goes bankrupt, we will be absorbed by the county. It is a fact that an increase in tax revenue will allow Port Richey to be self-sustainable and give excess revenue to work on bettering other areas of the city that I previously commented on in my opinions. It is a fact that it is a duty of a city official to listen to the residents. It is a fact that the ultimate responsibility of city officials is to act in the best interest of sustainability for the city. Thank you.
Ronald McDonald.
I'm shorter. Hi, Ron McDonald, 7610 Deidre Circle, and I'm the president of the Chamber of Commerce. There's 3 ways a government can help cover the cost of growth. You're going to either raise taxes on us, you're going to either cut our services, or you're going to have to increase our ad valorem base, period. There's no other options here. That property has laid fallow for so many years. I know. I investigated putting a Marriott hotel over there 5 years ago myself. And there's nothing wrong with people making a profit If they didn't, you wouldn't have had a job in the first place. So
You,
don't condemn.
oh, I couldn't hear you when you turned your back.
There's nothing wrong with making a profit. So trying to condemn developers because they're building something that they can make a profit on is not a bad thing. If we get an area that can provide us with the same kind of downtown type feel that they have in Newport Richey, in Dunedin, Safety Harbor, we will attract a lot of traffic. And it'll help us on a retail basis. And I agree, we need to help retail. That's why I started the Chamber of Commerce. We need to help small business. And we can't do that if we're intransigent to any kind of growth because we're going to give up that bedroom community feel. We need to increase our income or we're not going to survive as a city. Doing this increases our ad valorem tax base by hundreds of %, not just a few. I mean, we don't have that much income from down there now. And what do we have? Restaurants that are failing. We just lost Gill Dogs. You got another one that just closed right next to it. There's not enough traffic to support them. There's not enough support to keep businesses whole. And there's certainly nothing in this entire city that is of the quality to attract Class A tenants. This has the option of doing that. You talk about getting us a restaurant in here that's got a brand name to it and that has some quality to it. How are we going to do that if we don't have the people here to support that restaurant? You know, you talked about Whiskey Joe's, and they're already having trouble. I've met with their management. This is the lowest performing Whiskey Joe's they have. And why? Because we can't get anybody down here. I don't see where this development should be creating all of this angst when it's going to bring in new residents, it's going to create jobs, it's going to support new business, and it's going to bring money into this city that we need to operate. So that's my opinion. As the young lady says, we all have them. Thank you.
Mark Folks. Mark.
B-U-L-K-E-S.
I don't think they can hear you.
Buckets, is it Buckets?
Mark. B-U-L-K-E-S. Last name. Did he leave? He's no longer here. Okay. That is the extent of the individuals who signed this lovely sign-in sheet. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? I'm a little different because it's important and imperative for us to hear what you have to say. So I will let each one of you speak if you have to speak. So by raised hand, yes, sir. Please stay at the podium. Or walk up to the podium. State your name and your address, please, for the record.
My name is Robert Luke. I'm the owner of Robert Smoking Barbecue on US 19 in the beautiful city of Port Richey. And I say that because I've been in this city for 20 years. I've been owning my business going on 9 years here. And I didn't think that this city was ready for what I was bringing, to be totally honest. But you was. You was. It was a blind leap of faith that I took. And that's the same thing that I'm going to say about this guy. I can't talk about a lot of people in this town, but I damn sure can talk about this guy. He's from here. And when I fell on hard times and I had a flood, and I was in 4 feet of water and I was thinking about giving up, it was this guy. Not him so much throwing money in my pocket or trying to, no. It was the positive things about, hey man, just believe in a brighter future and that you continue going on and you're a good guy. And he didn't know me from a can of spray paint at that time. I'm being brutally honest. Most people in here that know of me, you know of me since I've had my restaurant. You've read about me maybe in the news and on the newspaper. And I've been to the bottom as low as you can get. And but I enjoy being in the city. I love getting up at 5, cooking for you guys every day. Rain, hurricanes, storms, and all of that. But I never believed that you guys would embrace me. I was different. I brought something different. And the people love it. The people love it. Sometimes you got to take a blind leap of faith and try something different. I'll tell you, I'm also from the beautiful city of Safety Harbor. That's where I was born and raised at. So when you talk about a small city and a person loving a small town, I don't think a person can love a small town as much as I do. But I definitely love the ideas of what these guys were talking about and what it could do for my business and the people around here. We're drowning bad because we don't have a great infrastructural thing. You're seeing it. And I love it over there by the water, but it's nowhere to go. Let's just be brutally honest. I mean, that's all I got to say. And on that note,
Yeah, my name is Mike McAllister, and I just had a couple comments. I thought there were some great questions and comments.
I need.
We can't hear you.
Can't hear you. Name and address.
Yeah, Mike McAllister over off Brent Street. Yeah, and some of the great comments. I understand, and I would just say this, maybe to get a little bit of a comprehensive feel for this. Some of the concerns that I'm hearing from people are the height of these buildings and what's that going to obstruct. And I pulled up my little. I was a military engineer for like 30 years. Built roads and bridges in Central America and other places. So I would just maybe urge that a hard look gets taken at the density there, because what my little whiz wheel tells me is that 4 to 5, when you start looking at when you get over 20, how tall is it going to be? And when you were looking at your 60, and it was, you brought it up too. So maybe what he said is we're going to put a box. We're going to plan for a box, and then we'll be specific what goes in the box. What I hear today, my big question would be, what's the tallest structure that's going to go in there to get the residence density that you were talking about? Now, initially you said 60, then you dropped it to 40, but even 20 takes what, a 3-story building?
Depends.
Yeah.
Depends.
Yeah, that's the standard, I think. So I would just urge that. When you design this box and they come up with the architectural plan that's going to go in there, what is the obstructions going to be? How tall is it going to be? And yet maximize. And they make a lot of good points. You want to grow your community. You want to grow your economy. You want to create jobs. You want to gain an economy of scale, scope and scale actually, to maybe solve some of the existing problems that already exist. So maybe all of that can be filtered into this strategic plan that you actually designed to fit in the box. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Bill.
Thank you, Sean.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Phil Apps, 5436 Blue Point Drive. How you doing, Ryan? Good, yeah. Me and Ryan, we had a little lunch and we talked a little bit. What I'm here on behalf of is I want you to understand that you do have a box. Okay, you've got a box to play with. What you're talking about is taking this box this size and making it this big. All right, you're talking about adding, they did away with the 900 capacity that you had, and that went away, and now that's up to 2,600 from what she just told us. And there's going to be 1,500 available units. Do you know what that's going to do to that little front area? We're not going to have any area. There's no way that it's 60 units per acre. It's just not going to fit. So what I'm asking you to do is to look at this and look at what's going to happen if you approve this. It is going to be nice. I don't doubt that. It will be really nice, and it'll be there. But if you want this and all that kind of density there, what you're trying to do is to support the few businesses that are there and put all the people right there in that one spot that'll support these businesses. Well, the businesses that are down there had the rug snatched out from under them when they changed and they didn't do the sidewalks, when they didn't do the advertising, when they didn't invest the money in the infrastructure that they had originally planned on. There's people down there that bought property on the intention of the city developing and improving it, but then the city pulled all that money back and they never did that. The city has done nothing but squash the businesses that are there and make it harder for them. What I'm asking you to do is to look at what we currently have. It's not as much the high rise as it is the density, the amount of people. You're talking about going 2,600 available new residents here. We have a total population of 3,000 within that square mile. In that total square mile, there's 3,000. You're going to take probably not 2,600, but probably 1,700 or 1,800 and put them right there, which is a 30-40% increase in population right in that front area. If you want that kind of density, why don't we put it out on Harbor Point and put a nice, big, beautiful condo right up out there, or apartments? Harbor Point's a great place to put it. They got a lot better view and a lot better area. But when you live behind two gates, you don't understand what it's going to be like dealing with all these people, because we don't live behind those two steel gates and we don't have a security guard. We've got to work with what we have. And if you overpopulate and you approve this WOD, they're literally taking everything that we have and removing that waterfront. Now, I urge you to take a serious look at this map that they're presenting. It does not include the boat ramp. It does not water it out. So you're now approving the boat ramp in the WOD where they could build on that. I know that it's protected area. I know that that's not part of the plan, but it's not, that needs to be leaned out. Another thing too is that you did not post in time. The proper posting was not done in time for you to make a vote tonight. Thank you very much.
Yeah, the young lady. You still want to speak? Yeah. Go ahead, sir.
Brent Skillman, 4502 Harbor Point. I look at the pictures on the walls in here and the people in them, and I can only imagine the conversations that took place over putting the first stoplight in this area, and the disputes, and the people for it, the people against it. Change happens regardless. Change will continue to happen. That's some prime real estate down there. And somebody is going to snatch it up and they're going to do something with it. And for me, not only do I like the sounds of what is being proposed, the city operates, a city has a fixed cost to operate. And there's only so many residents that they can get that from, as we've already heard. I'd really like to share in the cost of the city operating and the city improving with additional residents. And I think the residents that we're looking at adding are people that the tax base will be good. We're not looking at low-income housing. So again, let's as we consider this, let's think about your own situation, and are you willing to ante up and give more money to the city to get the city improvements done that we all agree need to be done? Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Cynthia Malin, 5446 Blue Point Drive. I do agree that we do need development. We do need to make the waterfront better. But I also agree in the fact that we shouldn't approve the maximum amount of density of 60 units per acre. I think that needs to be reduced tremendously. I still think you can do mixed use. I think also there's going to be a parking problem because right now I see on the plans only one parking unit per unit. And I think that that's going to push a lot of parking. People will try to park into the residential areas. I think this could cause a lot of problems, and to approve a maximum amount of density increase at this time, I think it should be lower, and we can always change that later in the future. But right now, I think we need to keep a lower density than they're proposing right now. Thank you.
Anyone else before I close to the public? Sir.
My name is Mike Lowe, 7811 Bayview. As one of the other gentlemen had mentioned, the one thing you can bank on is change, and it's either change for the better or change for the worse. And, we're talking about a local resident proposing a project here. I think he has the best interests of Port Richey and the community at heart. I've heard other cities mentioned, Dunedin, Newport Richey as examples. The city of Port Richey has a tremendous opportunity with the amount of parcels in the Bayou District that are undeveloped. That, we've got a developer here that's also a local resident that is willing to put his time and effort into developing those parcels, or a portion of them, to kick off a change, if you will, for the better for Port Richey. And it's my opinion that Port Richey could really be the jewel of Pasco County if a project like this were to happen, if you all would allow it to happen. So I think it is a good thing. I don't think it's a bad thing for developers to want to make money. They have to make money. Everybody here has to make money to make a living, make ends meet, support their families. So with that, I am in support of the project.
Thank you. Last call. Okay, I will close it to the public. Ms. Tammy, do you want to address any of the comments that were made or questions that were presented by the public? Maybe density?
Well, I guess I can sit here. I keep forgetting. That's where I live. For the so we did look at a sort of in the middle sort of standard of 40 units per acre. As far as the parking, that's a zoning related or a PUD related type of decision. That the variance request as part of that application is not related to this. Has to be something down the road. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I will say that sort of embedded or implicit in a planned unit development type zoning is the notion of community benefit. It's a negotiation. It's a give and a give and a get. And so that's where working with the community, working with staff, and the leaders such as yourself to come to a good outcome. The most suitable outcome for the community is what the PUD offers if it's managed correctly. So, but I don't think I have anything else. Is there anything that I didn't answer that anybody else can remember?
Thank you. In that case, I'll bring it back to the board again, and we will round robin one more time. Well, at least one more time. Mr. Perez. Pardon me?
1 second. Would you give her a chance to speak?
Okay. For protocol, if the applicant would like to speak again and answer any questions, we'll allow you to do so right now.
I would again thank you, and I again would reiterate to everyone, I think that we want to take feedback, we want to keep working on it, and that's why we're structuring that this way, is to work with the city, to do something that's sustainable for not only the project, but for the city. I think the one benefit to me is if I was doing everything for financial profit purely, I definitely wouldn't have gone this route. There are a number of things I could have done for a hell of a lot less money, including just retiring. And so I want to make that clear that I am aligned here. And that's why we want to do things that are more expensive to build, that are more costly, and not just put the things up that can turn the best profit, because I want to live here for the rest of my life. So that's selfish, but it also means that I'm pretty aligned to make sure we're doing something that's right and sustainable, and not just about, can I make the quickest buck? Because I would have done that already a lot easier. So thank you very much for hearing me today.
Okay, Mr. Perez.
Okay. A lot of really good, valid points, and I thank you guys very much for coming out and talking to us and expressing your opinions on it. I guess my big piece of this is we've already addressed and maybe beat it to death that we need development. we wouldn't be talking about density in residences if we weren't trying to come up with a residential number that supports the businesses. The businesses are the goal. The restaurants are the goal. The waterfront district down there right now has no waterfront for the residents. That's all private land. Not one of you can go down there. And if you're not a patron of one of those restaurants, you cannot get that waterfront right now if you tried. You would be trespassing. So you're not giving something up by having someone develop something like this. You only stand to gain. Parking. Zoning alone covers the number of parking spaces you have to have for any specific residence, any specific retail space, any type of anything. Building and planning is going to make sure there's enough parking before they pass anything. The city council could say, "We love this plan," and building and zoning will go, doesn't matter. You don't have enough parking spaces." So those things are going to get handled during planning. They're going to get handled during building and zoning and all of those pieces before we ever get that far. The only way that we get development, the businesses down there are dying. We are not supporting those businesses right now. They are not surviving with the residences that are here right now. We are not patronizing them enough, or there are not enough of us to keep them alive. We do need more people coming in. Will we be getting more people from Angeline, from the Moffett complex out there? Absolutely. Those are all people that are going to have to drive in and park. They are not people that are going to walk over and eat. Those are people that are going to have to find some place to park to do that. Right now, if we don't do something, then there's absolutely no master plan for what anybody who buys anything down there can do. They can buy a parcel and build to the zoning. Whatever it is that fits within that C2 zoning or C3 zoning, they can just build. They don't have to get anybody's approval on what it looks like. As long as they build to the code, there's nothing anyone can say about it. So they can build whatever meets in the code that we have right now. And there's nothing the reason that nothing down there is consistent and that there's nothing going on. Everybody complains about the city didn't put in sidewalks. The city didn't put this in. The main road that everybody uses to get down there does not belong to the city. It is private land that runs between Gildog and the Pirate Bar. That the businesses down there own all of that land. If they wanted that to look like one consistent thing and have streetlights that all look the same, they should have gotten together and pooled their money and bought streetlights that all look the same. It's all private land. So there's a lot of misinformation that runs around this town. There's a lot of misinformation about what has and hasn't been done by the town. This is our best, in my opinion, that seems to be the word of the night. In my opinion, this is the best chance we have to bring money to the table and then as a city have a conversation about what that waterfront can look like. If we don't do that, then we're at the whim of whoever wants to buy something when it closes and build it into whatever they want within the purview of that zoning that's there right now. If we don't develop this community and this community goes bankrupt, you will not have a voice in what Pasco County does with this waterfront. They will turn this into what they want it to turn into, and you will, if you have a voice at a county council meeting, it will be a still small voice in the corner compared to the entire county's voice about what they want to do with this waterfront. So this is our chance to be, as a collective 3,000 people, be at the table with a developer that wants to build something and tell that developer what we want it to look like. That we're not at the tell him what we want it to look like at this meeting. This right now is, again, just here to design what we would be willing to let the box be so that we can start developing it. They're not going to put 60 units per acre at the front of at the edge of the seawall. We're not going to let them during the PUD, even if he's not the developer and we do this and somebody else buys that land and comes in and goes, "Ooh, cool, you made a really big box. I'm going to build this thing." No, you're not. The city council still has to approve the PUD. That's why it's written the way it's written, so that we have that strength to be able to have that conversation as all of this is being developed. That's why we want to make the change. That's why the change is proposed.
I'd like to clarify. I've seen several maps and everything for that area, and I'm not sure. I want to be clear. What are we in agenda item number 1, 2, and 3? What area are we talking about?
Can we pull up the first thing?
I got 3 different maps right in front of me.
Yeah, it's kind of an evolution of.
Yeah, but
Tammy will.
Let Tammy explain.
Tammy will explain.
No clicker for you.
Oh, no, the text amendment.
I know.
There you go. Okay, I think I have it. So this boundary is what was submitted with the applicant's text amendment. I mean, I drew this, but it's essentially from Pasco Way down to the river, all the way to the water along US 19.
that's gone.
Right, so that's what they're proposing. That's still in the game. But what I had done is to create a map. Get to the end here. There we go. So this area excludes Waterfront 1 from the Imagine Cody River Survey Planning Area, except for the Gildog site. It includes that. So before, when we had outlined Waterfront 1 in the planning area, that little piece of Gildog was carved out. For this purposes, we've included that. So that's for the purposes of the text amendment. That means that if this is approved, either one of those maps, whichever you decide that you like the best, that's where somebody could have a future land use map amendment that they apply for. Just as those last 2 cases that I went through, that's what's happening. If this text amendment goes through, then somebody can say, I would like to change the designation on my property to use that designation. So those are those 2 maps.
So there's 2 maps. So which one are we talking about in agenda number 1? Which map?
So for number 1, there's this map, which is a consideration by staff. And then the other one is the larger map, which is this. This is the one that came with the applicant's application.
So the first one's from the applicant. First one's from the applicant. The second one's from staff. Correct? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
The first one was submitted by the applicant.
And I think it's important to understand, so as your function, you don't have to just say yes or no. You could say yes to map 1, which is what was submitted by the applicant. You could say no. Or you could say yes, but we like map number 2. Or we like a third map that we're going to tell you what we want it to be. You can make recommendations to change it.
So think about whether, based on that text description of the new future land use category in the comp plan, should it apply to this whole area? Should it apply to a portion of the area? Should it apply to none of the area? That's really what it comes down to.
Okay. So the second choice, the smaller area, basically removes about 90% of the waterfront.
Yes, it takes from the planning area for the Imagine Cody River. There was the thing called Waterfront 1.
Mm-hmm.
That there really was an interest in keeping that a little bit more low intensity, more retail, more just a little less tall buildings, I guess, is probably. Now, granted, you can build up to 72 feet there today with the current zoning.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, tall buildings are a possibility.
All right, my second question. My feeling is the biggest contention is the height of the potential buildings. It seems to be the number one thing I hear about. And I think you've alluded to that's going to be handled in the PUD and zoning and on down the road and everything. Can that be made part of this whole zoning area? That And we
So-
can make
so-
the size of the box, the height of the box only 72 feet. We're using the box analogy. Can it only be 72 feet high?
So it's customary, for the most part, there's always differences from place to place, but comprehensive plans don't get into that detail. That's something handled by zoning. Because you could have one parcel within this that's very suitable for a tall building and some other place that's not. So giving that sort of another ceiling, I guess it's a roof, putting the roof on it, may not give you the outcomes that you're looking for, because every site should be considered in its context.
Okay. For our attorney, can that be part of the amended text?
I agree with what she just said. Yes, but
Okay, yes.
yes, but
Good.
yes, but
Okay.
an important but, and I think that's what planner just said. If you're not looking at just one parcel, you're giving an area, whatever area you guys decide, this new name and these new abilities within it. Not every parcel within there is the same thing. So if you think I want to limit this parcel, you may not want to limit that parcel. At this stage.
A comprehensive plan deals with extent, how big, the intensity, and the use. So those kind of like the main things that are covered in a comprehensive plan category. But, could you? I think that from a purist's perspective, I would say leave that for zoning. But, certainly, we can entertain anything. Really.
Let me help kind of clarify that. This is a question for building and planning. What is the current zoning height restrictions already on a C3?
72 feet.
So there's your current, we already have it in zoning.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mike was saying, there's already a box that's already there that's already in that. So that doesn't, by capping that, anything besides that will require multiple things. From the PUD, I mean, there's lots of things that have to happen.
And even with that 72 feet, you have to have additional setbacks. Correct. So once you get above a certain amount, you have to, so there's a lot of, I always calibrating, up and down, forth.
I think
that's where design gets more so into zoning than it does in future land use planning. We're looking at
the biggest part of this is density. This is the largest part of this.
Right. So
height restrictions are controlled, like you said, by zoning, which is already in place. So anything to change that would come through with the PUD, and you'd run through that whole process all over from there. So you already have your height restrictions already built in the way the building is already built. So go ahead. Next question.
Okay. So anything proposed in that area right there, if anybody wants to build anything more than 72 feet high, they would have to go before zoning and go through that to ask for.
And right now within your city, there's nothing that allows over 72 feet. It's my understanding.
Right.
Correct.
And I think that MPUD is maybe even. Do you remember? I think that there might be a height limitation even on. So there will need to be things addressed down the road. This is just this first step, but it's planning is not tidy. It's always
right. Any other questions?
No, unless you're ready for an opinion.
Yes, I'd love an opinion.
Then I think I could approve their request. However, I would want to change the density to 30 per acre.
Okay. All right. Ms. Lori.
I just wanted to mention, I think it's great that the developer, asked our opinion, because I don't think any other developer would. And I really do have this feeling that if we don't work with someone, we're going to lose this city and we'll be at the county's mercy, and you're going to have condos all over. So I would be inclined to recommend approval with a max of 40 units per acre.
Okay. Anything else?
I disagree. It's not the height, it's the density of the people coming in. Okay. And Ms. Cook said the city council and mayor are supposed to listen to the people. They don't do that. After Ms. Verona came in and gave the initial city plan that she'd done, they had a town hall. A lot of residents came in and said, nope, this is not what we want. And at that point in time, someone says, oh, gee, you guys don't really know what you want, so this is what I want to do. Third, I don't trust the city because they're not good stewards of our money, that they will take any of this tax revenue and actually do anything with it. The oil spill off the coast of Louisiana was, they made them pay out to a lot of coastal cities a lot of money, and it was supposed to be for infrastructure, the sidewalks, lighting, pumps, and things that we need. The city of Port Richey was awarded $667,000 in a grant. They sat on it, and that grant's gone. We'll never get that money back. So, personally, I don't trust them.
Well, that was maybe the old administration. So
Well, that's fine, and
they were hoping to
that's
use it for
good.
dredging.
And
That's
Let's
why
let's
they
reduce the
wanted
banter
it for
between
dredging.
back and forth, guys. I understand what it's okay to have a conversation and make your statement known, but you can't do it back and forth. All right, I'm going to interject this now. I've been in this city for 25 years. I've raised my children here, just like the developer. I've sat on this board for 20 years, and I have implored the city for years to find a better way and to allow some kind of development. Because I want to be part of it. It's the reason I sit up here. I want to help kind of guide the path, give a place for my children to live. But at the same time, I'm neighbors with all of you. Phil and I own property in the same street he lived on. I lived on the corner from him. We took our boats down the same things. So I understand his concern as well. That being said, there are real concerns here. And if we don't control and manage the process accordingly, like many of the residents have stated, Mr. Frez stated, Lori stated, it may come out of our hands. So the city, Joe, like you said, haven't been the best stewards of our money over the last 20 some years. And as such, it puts us in a very precarious situation. I went to dinner with my wife last night at Hooters on a Monday night football. That place should have been packed to the gills. I pulled in there was 20 cars there. We walked inside to sit inside. We were the only table inside. The joke was, we'll sit wherever you want at 8 o'clock at night. That place should have been packed. That's concerning. Now, from a personal standpoint, I live on Miller Bayou. I got to look across the water at that thing. So whatever they decide they're going to build. So height restrictions are obviously a concern of mine as well. But like they said, 72 feet's already built in the box that we already have. So he can build it to 72 feet if he buys it anyway. So my concern is also from a structural infrastructure standpoint in the city, we are not equipped to manage 60 units per acre, in my personal opinion. Now, after looking at multiple cities who've done this, thanks to Nancy for providing us all that data, and so Ms. Tammy, with 40 units here, 30 units here, the city of Newport Richey is even considering 60 on some of their spots. I'm of the opinion that 40 units per acre would be something would be sustainable and manageable. Now, as Phil brought forth, we're looking at a large piece of it. And I agree that existing map 1 compared to map 2 is a massive difference between the two because of waterfront 1, is that what we're calling it? I feel like I'm on a spaceship. So if we cut off a large piece of that, that will reduce, because of the density, that will reduce that. But he still has to maximize the density of stuff of what he has personally. And he only has, what do you have, 5 acres you're working with? 6, 8, 7 acres, 9 acres?
Yeah, less than 9.
Yeah, so it's less than 9. So if you do the math, we're not going to get 2,000 new units there. So I think it's important, and I embrace the idea that a resident wants to be part of working with us. And I like the idea that we can work with him to see something grow. I know when I saw the first set of pictures come through and you're driving down Grand Boulevard and all you saw was a gigantic building, because it's the way the image drew, people started freaking out a little bit, breathing heavy in the back of their room. I get it. You can't see the water anymore. And like the gentleman said, there's no access to the water. But like Mike said, there really is no access to the water unless you're sitting at that restaurant anyway. So my personal contention is that I would personally be good with 40 units per acre. I think that would help him dramatically. I'm scared that if we open a box and we do 60, that we are going to be just like Clearwater, just like Largo, and I don't want to live there. You know, if it becomes Largo and Clearwater, I'm going to Crystal River, and I don't want to live here. So it's just, that's where we're at. So, and that's my opinion.
We need to do number one first. We need a motion on number one.
So yes, Ms. Nancy has put it together for us. We need to do each item separately. I don't know if we're in a position where we're able to write or even suggest a motion. If there is, I will listen to each one. Do I have a motion regarding agenda number one, the comprehensive plan text amendment to create a new land use category for future application?
Can I ask the question again before we get that far? Okay.
Absolutely.
Let me get to it. It was a long document.
Tell me about it.
In the staff analysis, the 2023, and this is probably directed at you because you would know this better than any of the rest of us, the 2023 Live Local Act. For those of you who haven't read that, allows whatever we set as a maximum density anywhere in any kind of thing like this can be enacted by another developer anywhere within the city to produce low-income housing. So if we set this at 60 and another developer comes in and buys a piece of property not within this district, but in an appropriately deemed multifamily zone, and they decide to build low-income homes there, they can enact it and build within zoning, whatever's within zoning, they can build 60 units. They will be able to tag onto this and build 60 units per acre.
Is that correct, Tammy? Because we're actually putting this inside the actual only location on the map.
So yes, the density provisions of your comp plan, whatever that high, and there's some amendments in Senate Bill 3 something, but I can share that. I just haven't gone through it like in detail. But it did look at whatever your highest density was and your highest height within a mile. I think they've ratcheted down on that. But just to think about this, the low-income houses are those houses that would be affordable to somebody between 80 and 120% of your area median income. That's more like your workforce housing, teachers, firefighters, the people that we need in our communities to be able to afford housing. And so it's not necessarily, probably what people are picturing. And also it's only, you have to have 40% of your, whatever your building, your units are, to be available for affordable units, and then the rest could be market rate.
Right, but from a developer's perspective, because it's only 40% of it has to meet that low income standard, raising this to this at this point so that we have a big box, so that it makes it easy for us to have that discussion, and then someone goes a mile across east of 19, they get within that mile radius, and they buy a piece of property over there, and then they build really tall condos that are crazy dense to bring in that. I just wanted to discuss that amongst us.
You can adopt design standard, other standards in your codes apply. So setbacks and things like that.
Sure.
I know that I work in Zephyr Hills. We've been talking about multifamily standards. What is it that multifamily looks like, so that those things can apply. You can't regulate density and you can't regulate height, but some of these other things you can. So, but it is it's an unknown because they don't have to have, it's an administrative process.
It's brand new. It's brand new. I mean, it's a new law. There's not a lot. There's beginning to be litigation about it and how it does work and how it doesn't work. It's very new. But as it stands right now, what Tammy said is correct. That is a possibility.
Right. That would be my concern, is that a mile from where we're talking about doing this would be the Pelican.
Right.
Okay. So that's already multifamily. It's already set up for that. If someone wanted to buy that and tear those apartments down and build without the height restriction and without the density, up to this new density restriction, they could ignore code. They could ignore the zoning in that space and build to the maximum of what we do within the setbacks of that space. And that to me would be, I'll be able to see both of them from my house, and his is going to be pretty and theirs is not. And so that's just something I wanted to bring up, was that this is a real concern, that if we set these density levels I'm inclined to agree with you that something 40, 45 is probably closer in alignment with everything that's going on. I don't like the tiered approach of we could always just add more, because obviously we see how hard this process is to do it once. Doing it again would be harder. So I mean, that was the big thing in the reading that I wanted to bring up that we hadn't really touched on yet, was just making sure that we understood that we're setting a bar that someone else could, that's not someone who lives here that wants to make it pretty, could take advantage of. And we've seen that at zoning and planning, or zoning, that they will take advantage of it if given the opportunity.
If anybody wants to look it up, it's Senate Bill 328, adopted in 2024 May. So I can provide a link.
Love new bills. Any other discussion? Randy, Lori, Joe? Okay. I'll entertain a motion, or I will withdraw, or we can
Entertain a motion.
entertain a motion.
I guess a question for you would be, if we want to change something in the text amendment.
Yes.
So now if we decide as a group that we want it to be 40.
You could make a motion to approve the text amendment with the change of whatever.
Okay. So I think
If I can clarify, so a density, I think that's the density, and then also the map area.
right. So that was my
And
next.
striking that one piece of non-residential in that text.
So
Where was that? I was going to ask that because you mentioned the three different, the map, the 40, and there was that third thing. Where was that?
Non-residential intensity. So we would strike, I think it said residential density and intensity perhaps.
Yeah.
But non-residential is what needs to, because intensity is measured for all of those. But that's the box. It's in the first paragraph.
It's in this slideshow, right?
It is, but I don't know if I could move it.
I think I said halfway through the first paragraph on the proposed language, it says the Cody River Landing US 19 corridor designation establishes the maximum residential density and non-residential development intensity. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm going to show right here.
Oh,
Strike from first paragraph the maximum residential density and development intensity. So we don't need to say non-residential because it applies to all uses except parking structures. Parking structures are not leasable areas, so not included.
So if you wanted to make a motion and adopt the application as is, you make a motion to adopt the application as presented. If you want to make a motion to adopt a text amendment with the recommendations of the planner, you could pick the 1, the 2, or the 3 that you want. Or if there's a fourth one you've come up with, you can add that as something you want to change. Just explain what it is.
Okay.
Can you show the next slide? Yeah, can you show the next slide? Yeah, that's the second, the map.
That's the second
That's the
map.
second map.
So that's before I'm ready to make any kind of motion.
I knew that was the next question.
So,
Go ahead.
we need to talk about the map. So it would be of that. So again, we're trying to build box. So PUD would allow us to, if we use the original map that includes the waterfront, we can use the PUD discussion at that stage to make sure that they don't build 45 at the waterfront area. If we don't include that section, if we go with this map, my concern is that we get no boardwalk in the development. So they build their restaurants at the ground floor. They get their residences that they want for the development. It doesn't do anything for our residents' access to the waterfront for that nice boardwalk and for all of those pieces. Because at this point, if we adopt that, then again, someone can buy Seaside and follow the current rules and ignore what we just spent all this time doing. Because what we just spent all this time doing only affects what's inside that box. And the stuff that's on the waterfront, which is the stuff that we're really seem to be mostly concerned about. I think there's less concern about what's going on the old trailer park from most of the people around, and more concerned about what's going to happen with Seaside and Gildogging is part of that, but realistically, Gildog's waterfront view wasn't a waterfront view. It was a small canal view. So it was the parcel between Gildog and Seaside was the starting to get into waterfront view. That's where you're going to want to have that boardwalk that walks around and cuts around that peninsula and all the way back up to Hooters, which I could see the Hooters wanting to be part of this development and be in the ground floor of something that they were building and want to sell that property to develop it alongside this PUD. So it would be, my suggestion would be that, but I'd like to hear what you guys have to say about your thoughts on the map.
I don't know that it makes a difference. Tammy? I don't think that makes a difference from what he's talking about as far as infrastructure, as far as putting a boardwalk down. That just controls what we're doing for density in that particular box, right? That area right there.
But if you activate, say, like if somebody wants to make investments on the waterfront and
Sure.
you don't think that the 40 that you're thinking of is too much, unless something's happening with those properties, you're probably not going to get somebody building your Riverwalk or your. So I can see, yeah, certainly you could still build your Riverwalk without this, but do you want?
I agree, but that maximizes outside of that box. That maximizes that waterfront 18 units per acre, because that's what's currently in the city.
That's right. That's all.
So they can't build a superstructure there.
I understand that, but there's nearly no economic reason for him to buy Seaside and make it a pretty boardwalk for us. Because it's not inside what he can. It's not high enough density for him to do that, and we still control that we can limit him during the PUD phase to building. We can say within 200 yards of the waterfront, you're limited to 2 stories.
So just draw the line to include Seaside, right?
The rationale behind this is that with this Imagine Cody River, we had those 3 distinct areas, and we
Right.
thought of going in and creating tailored standards for each of those 3 areas. This kind of it had a little bit more intensity that might have been more appropriate for US 19, but maybe not so much for the waterfront, particularly at 60 units per acre. And granted, the 0.6 FAR, how attractive that is for redevelopment. Obviously, things aren't moving out there, so 18 units per acre and 6.6 FAR isn't enough to get investment. So the only reason I would, I kind of was looking forward to the moment where we could actually do more tailored planning to that waterfront area.
Of course.
In the absence of that, we're just, and maybe like the gentleman said, you take a leap of faith, but that's your community's values that needs to come to play in that. And I just gave you an alternative as a planner. So
You used the word you used was a leap of faith. I have a board member who doesn't trust the leap of faith.
well, I'm saying
So
I
that's
use
a
the
real
individuals.
concern, right?
Yeah. So
I mean, but that's why we're on this board, right?
Right.
We're the step between. We're here to be their voice before it gets to council.
Right.
How many acres is that? You haven't said that yet.
which
Right there. Right.
The second drawing.
I had it
17 or something.
I think 17. 17.
17 or was it less than?
I think it's too old.
But like this plan, this would give us, doing something along this lines gives us the ability to
show it to them so they can see it. The original one.
Where she's got all 3 sections laid out, right? Putting this in the future land use map, right? Putting all of this within the box gives us the ability to have that conversation with the developer every time the developer comes to the table. If we don't put all of everything we're concerned about within that box, then the discussion, we are not part of, this board and nor the citizens are part of that discussion at all, ever. If somebody wants to come in and buy if we don't include that out there and someone jumps in and buys Hooters or buys the casino boat land and decides that, and it's not inside of what we're doing, they're going to build to whatever the current density is and to whatever they want with whatever style they want. We will not have any discussion on that whatsoever. and they can build 72 feet high at 18 units. Okay, so it's 18 units per acre. So they build 72 feet high, and they build $1 million 2,500 square foot condos. I can get my money out of 18 units per acre.
15.
But you're 15. Okay, still. Okay, so now they're $2.6 million condos. Right? Because they're waterfront and they're 72 feet high, and I can see down the river. I'm the tallest thing down there. And I can build to that within the code that we already have. If we don't capture that land in this new future land use plan. That's my concern, is that this gives us the opportunity as citizens, as a city of Port Richey citizens, and this board and the council, the ability to be part of the development of all of this, because they can't come into this and enact any of this and get to this density without coming to the table during the development phase.
Yeah, Tammy's got a response to that.
So you'll notice from the title it says the category is called Cody River Landing US 19 Corridor. The idea is that there would be a Cody River Landing Waterfront 1 or whatever we call it, and there would be Cody River Landing on the other side of US 19. So it wasn't to separate this out was not to say those other areas would not be addressed. They could be. It was just being more incremental and also being more specific to a context, because the waterfront is a very different context. It holds a different place in people's hearts than the US 19 corridor. So that's why I thought that maybe they're make it more palatable to the community to have a US 19 approach and a waterfront approach, and that was behind that decision. So, but there's many ways to think about this.
Two more of these discussions.
Well,
there is a current restriction right now that says to participate in this, you have to have 5 acres.
Right.
Which.
Yeah, step into this.
Tammy and probably Matt and a lot of people can elaborate better on this than me, but to participate in a PUD here, you have to have 5 acres.
Correct.
And so by expanding it out to the water, if someone just bought Seaside,
they couldn't do it.
They wouldn't be able to participate in the PUD as I understand it today. If
that's a problem for the whole project thing, because nobody has 5 acres.
Yeah.
Well,
nobody
except for the applicant.
But there's some people that want to buy it.
So let them buy it.
We don't own the roads, so, and then the jump roads. So it doesn't matter, the 5 acres is done, you're gonna have so much density.
All right.
I'll make
Randy wants to make a motion.
I'll make a motion. The area that we will approve is this original Cody River Landing yellow area. I don't know what that's called.
Map 1.
The larger area.
Oh, can we go back to that just to make sure?
Oh, right there.
Right?
Yeah, the yellow area.
Yeah, that's not.
That's not it.
Yeah, that's not.
That's
Go to the first proposed. Is that the yellow is the first
yellow
proposed?
area is Cody River Landing, but it does not include the mobile home park.
So
okay.
Some of the one the applicant has is inclusive of the
The super area then. Area.
Well,
that's the same.
yeah, we had to find some maps to figure out, but the mobile home park is not part of Cody River Landing, right? So this is the
Well, I'm
correct.
gonna make a part of it.
So you want your motion to include the mobile home park up to Pasco Way?
Yes.
Close the vote round.
So the waterfront.
Yeah,
How about area 1, 2, and 3 of this map? Is that possible?
So 1, 2, and 3 is the original proposal.
Okay, I'm gonna stick with the original proposal. My motion for the area to include the original proposal of all 3 waterfront 1, waterfront 2, and the US 19 corridor. To approve the FAR floor area to 2.0, and to approve the units per acre to 40 dwelling units per acre.
So if I understand you, I think that means you want to make a motion to approve the comprehensive plan text amendment to create a new land use category for future application, which is ordinance number 24704, including the original map proposed by the applicant, but changing the 60 dwelling units to 40 dwelling units.
Yes.
And the non-residential strike.
And we're going to take out in the very first paragraph, we want to take out the word non-residential. Is that okay? The first paragraph of the text amendment. That's a lot. Do you think you can say all that again?
The non, no.
I feel like we need a whiteboard when we do this, so you can write out what we're supposed to say and hold it up.
Okay, the FAR would be 2.0 floor area ratio for non-residential and for multifamily residential, and the multifamily residential dwelling units per acre would be 40 dwelling units per acre.
Maximum 40 units.
Maximum.
Do I have a discussion or a second?
I'll second that.
We'll address the boat ramp afterwards, Phil. I understand what you're saying, the boat ramp, but the boat ramp is not, it's a different entity altogether. With this, you know that as well as I do. They've tried to develop that for years. That is, the way that family wrote that, there's nobody gonna touch our boat ramp.
But it's handled by zoning.
It's zoning, that's a zoning issue anyway, so we can't really do that, so that. Okay, so I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And anyone who denies? Any
No, I accept.
nays? Excuse me. For the record, did you approve or deny?
Approve.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, so now you go to number 2.
Number 2, comprehensive plan future land use map amendment ordinance number 24-705. Do we have any discussion?
You want to maybe remind them what that means?
Tammy, can you clarify what that is and just rehash it real quick?
If we can go back to
Give me 1 minute. Let me get them all.
the blue one. There you go.
There's a lot of them. Okay.
You're done great.
This one. Hold on just a
Oh,
second.
here we go. There you go.
Shut up, Marshall.
You have control. Yeah, that's the map.
So now what number 2 is asking is to take what you just passed, you just made a new future land use category, and you're being asked by the applicant to apply that to these 2 parcels. Because right now they are mixed use, I think.
They're commercial mixed use. So we'll be redesignating them from commercial mixed use land use category to the Cody River Landing US 19 category. We're probably going to have to change that name, but
wow, it's a mouthful.
To the new category.
And were there any recommendations from you to modify anything on this one?
No.
No, okay.
I mean, we were cutting it in half.
Ask a question?
Yes, ask a question.
Yes.
Okay, so with the 5-acre PUD requirement, then what would rezoning this to this new thing allow them to do?
So because the applicant has authority or I don't know what you call it, but there would be ownership of not only these parcels, but the mobile home park. And by virtue of a public right-of-way, they're contiguous.
Okay.
So they could be aggregated.
Got it. That was the question. Okay.
Okay. I'll entertain any motions regarding number 2.
All right. Get my wording right. I move that we adopt the comprehensive.
You're recommending council.
Recommending a motion.
You're making a motion to recommend.
Making a motion.
To recommend council adopt it.
He's never lost a word, so I don't understand it.
That's what we do this
7 years before I can get this straight. I am I'm making a motion to recommend the adoption
that
a council adopt the comprehensive plan future land use map amendment ordinance number 24-705 as stated.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay. Number 3, comprehensive plan, future land use map, amendment, ordinance number 24-706. Ms. Tammy.
Ashley, could we bring up the purple?
And just to clarify, everybody approved or?
I
Jay was in there.
I just
Yeah,
wanted
Joe
to
was in
double
there.
check. And the
Purple.
other one.
Yeah.
US 19, correct?
Correct. There you go. That's the subject parcel for 24706.
Which is the former trailer park.
Correct.
Okay. I'll entertain any motions regarding that parcel. Number 3, item number 3.
Okay.
You got it. You got it now.
I make a motion to recommend to council that they adopt the comprehensive plan future land use map amendment ordinance number 24-706 as it stands.
Do I have any discussion or a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
Okay. All right. We have no old business to discuss today.
Number 4.
There is?
Number 4.
Yes.
Let's take
Can we take a stretch break though?
Absolutely. Let's take a 5-minute break, please.
We're gonna do that.
Yes.
Turn off your microphone.
Oh, yeah.
Totally ridiculous. I just see you build damn storage unit. Then everybody needs this stuff. What's that? Dude, we need more people. How many times you go down to them restaurants? I've never seen you down there. I'm down there all the time.
I'm down there at the park.
I'm sorry.
Hey, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. It's a great hat. I think we can get creative with this. That makes sense. It just means like maybe we do one less restaurant, maybe we do one less retail job. Like, it's not really about like to me it's break even, probably, but like not have vacancies. Businesses that you can't support businesses.
Back to order. All right. Next item on the agenda, discussion of amending Chapter 10, Article number 9 of the 4 of the Port Richey Code.
All right, this is being brought back to you. You've seen this section a few times, but they're coming back to you this time specifically to discuss boat canopies, which was something that you collectively had asked for us to add to this ordinance. This is a rough draft. I've already been told that perhaps some of it's not really accurate from someone that knows more about boats and canopies than I do. He's going to share his thoughts with us in a moment. I will tell you this language was taken from a couple different cities and reviewed by a building official and put in as you see it. I will let you know that on page 98, I think it's still page 98, section 9, I do not recommend we keep that. It talks about getting neighbors' permission. It shouldn't be in here. I meant to remove that before it came out, but it snuck in anyway. I recommend that be removed. Other than that, any questions?
Neighbor's permission. All right. Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Would you want to hear from my new expert? He's here.
Absolutely. We'd love to hear from the expert. Please state your name and address for the record.
Back from the restroom.
Lucky guy.
Roth, 8031 Island Drive. I'm kind of here with the hat on from a PAB, Port Authority Board perspective. I think you guys got handed something that may not be something that you want. Basically, what is being presented is a regulatory issue under the ordinances and codes, and I don't believe that is covered under zoning's area of engagement according to the charter. So I offer you an out if you would choose. A couple of things. One, in the document that you have, it describes being able to extend the cover 30 inches beyond the marine structures that exist. So conceptually, what that does is move 30 inches further into the waterway, obstructing navigation to other vessels. As you probably are aware, as it's described in that particular ordinance, it's really a third as far as what's available. A third for one property owner, a third for the other property owner, and a third for the remaining waterway. However, that is in conflict with state regs, which calls for a 20%. So that, if we're going into this, we probably ought to harmonize with what the state says we could do with their water, which is essentially that. So I would submit or recommend potentially that you table this particular issue so we can get our arms around this in a better way, if that is helpful in any way. But I point out those couple of things, not to mention Lee County is also referenced into that. As Ms. Meyer mentioned, it's a consolidation. It's purely an edit, but it's just one other thing. So,
thank you.
That was something I was going to ask about. I just learned just last week, I have a niece that's in the environmental business in Orlando. And I mentioned to her that the city is talking about approving boat canopies. And she said, well, the state, it's legal under state regulations to have boat canopies right now. She said, and the way she understands the law is the city can't make a law more restrictive than the state rules. So I think what you're saying is we need to know what the state rules are and kind of get in line with that.
Right. I think the main thing from the canopy, I mean, there's a number of things under 10 that are potential challenges, because 10's fairly complex. It addresses with docks and seawalls and all kinds of things. But the key thing is obstructing the waterway is a navigation issue. And by allowing to put the canopy, because you want to cover your boat, and the place to attach it is those outbound pilings that are in the waterway. Generally speaking, most people put those to the extent possible. The 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. However, if you go 30 inches beyond that, it's no longer that, because you have an aerial encroachment in the navigable waters. And I'm a sailboat guy, so I have things that stick up in the air. 30 more inches could be a problem, or if you're on you have a boat that has a raised steering helm, any of those things could be a problem by extending into the navigable water. So I make that as a key issue to clarify. How you deal with that in the verbiage has to be cared for. But the other thing was, this is an old ordinance. It's been on the books for a long time. The state has moved from when this was written, and we never kept up. When they say we can only go 20% into a waterway, that's not a third. It's not a half. It's 20%. So that's more restrictive. We can be more restrictive, but we can't be less restrictive than what the state prescribes, particularly since it's their control of the waterways, not the city.
Not that we want to, but I think the suggestion is valid to hold the boat canopy. So maybe my newly found unpaid expert and I can work together and move this forward. If that's okay with you guys, and then we'll bring it back when we're ready for that. But I would like to go ahead if we can and move the seawall part forward to council unless someone has an issue with that. That was reviewed previously a number of times by this board.
So your suggestion is to table the canopy
Yes.
section and move forward with the
Move
seawall?
forward with the seawall section.
Okay.
You guys, you're free to look at it again, but you have seen it and approved the language previously.
Any discussion or questions regarding the seawall issue?
Seawall.
Yes,
Yes.
Mr. Malin.
Section 10-281,
Yes.
C for Charlie.
Yes.
It says, that, oh, sorry. Better. Okay. It says that it, 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth. Yeah, fourth line down says, in addition to such civil action, if the council determines the maintenance failure constitutes a public nuisance, it may request criminal prosecution as provided by, and it gives the state. I don't think that this should be left to the city council. Those people do not have certifications, of how this stuff works, and having seen some of their past actions, I think that they could actually use this to target people. And what?
I was going to respond. If you're not done, I want you to finish.
Okay.
I thought you were done.
No, that they could target people and, and have them prosecuted. We have a building code manager. He's more than sufficient to go out and do that. If they need something more to write the tickets for this, then that's fine. They can consult with someone, but to just arbitrarily give it over to the city council is just not right.
Okay. It's not arbitrarily giving it to city council. Let me explain the way it would work. We can do this. City council can do what's in subsection C, even if it's not written in subsection C, because it's Florida law. So this, adding subsection C here is just putting everyone on notice. This is something that is an avenue the city could go if you still do not comply. If it was to go, and you've only pointed out that one section, so we'll talk just about that. If city council, by a majority vote, after hearing from the building official, determines that this is an action that they want to move forward on, all that is the building official then going to law enforcement via state attorney's office. The city council cannot file a criminal charge. The state attorney's office files a criminal charge. This says city council could vote to say, yes, let's entertain that. Let's take that forward to the state attorney's office. But they themselves would not make the decision on whether to charge somebody. It would be an independent investigation by the state attorney's office.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes. And that's existing state of Florida law.
Yes, and that can happen. Again, what's in C is not new. I didn't create it. I mean, I wrote the words, but I didn't create the concepts. They are in Florida statute, and it's really there because, and 99.9% of people comply with what code enforcement and the building official asks them to do. There's some people that don't, and we could take them to code enforcement hearings 10, 12 times. They pay a fine, they pay a fine, they pay a fine, and they never comply, and they still don't comply. And it may not be a slum and blight issue, but we need compliance. It may be a safety issue, or it may just be we need them to do what they've been told to do. They may be using, their house as a hotel, but it's a single-family dwelling. We need them to stop. So the Florida law lets this city council give direction to say, file a lawsuit in civil court, or if there's some provision of the law that's being violated that we think is criminal, we can refer it to the state attorney's office. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it's not written. the way you explained it, it's not written like that in this. So I think it should go back and say, city council can go back to the building official.
Well, no, the building official would present it, and
Right.
city council, well, let's take a step back. The building official would say, here's an issue, to go to the city manager. City manager would say, hey, city attorney, let's talk about this. My building official wants to arrest somebody. We would have a discussion, we would look at the facts and see what is going on. If it was appropriate for a civil action, for an injunction, I would ask Matt to bring it to you, I would present it to you and tell you why I think it's appropriate. Not you, I'm sorry, city council. And then
So-
city council would make that decision. If it was a criminal situation, same concept. Building official would bring it most likely to Matt. Matt would get it on an agenda if we think it's appropriate. It would be presented to city council through me, obviously giving my opinion on what should happen next.
Okay.
So there is a protocol in place.
Yeah, yes.
And the resident is supposed to be part of that during that process. The protocol is it goes from code enforcement to the building official to the city manager. City manager should have a conversation with the resident, and then goes to council, or goes to you and then goes to council.
Well, I can't promise the city manager will talk to the resident. That would be up to
Is
them.
there part of that where that's supposed to happen?
If you have a situation that's gone through the code enforcement proceeding, code enforcement at some point has spoken to that individual. They've been put on notice. They've been to court. They've been found in violation. So it's not like it's going to be a surprise. It's a process. Now, I can't tell you what conversation is going to happen with whom during that process, but the person will be on notice that they have violated.
I'm good.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm gonna side with Joe on this one
Right,
because
that's
you know what?
And listen,
I will tell you personally, it happened to me this summer, and I was not happy. And Veronica did not like the conversation when I walked in there and had a conversation. I got a letter saying that I called my attorney immediately and said, "Why am I getting from Pasco County saying that I have a criminal charge against me because I've already been talking with the building officials about putting siding inside of my house." You know, what I mean, that was a very uncomfortable conversation for them.
Well,
and there was no protocol that was fit in. So, like he's saying, that there's criminalization that could be happening.
Well, that's two different things.
I know, I get it,
Yeah.
but there's
I
the
understand.
verbiage is a little vague.
I can okay, this is the verbiage the state of Florida provides for such an action. I can add a word, I can add a clarification, we can take it out. If you don't like it there, we can remove it, but understand it's still an option for city council to do these things.
Well, this wouldn't be making it less restrictive or more restrictive.
It just wouldn't be state yet. This C is just giving the information to residents that these are options if you don't comply. These are the other avenues that can be taken. I can try to find language that I can't find any language to address your issue. Your issue is
Neither could she. She called it a love letter. Local.
but that is yes, it's a love. It's a
That's what she
local
called
ordinance violation.
Yeah, that's what she called it.
That process, although it feels and appears criminal, it's actually not. It's civil, but it's just handled by criminal courts currently in this city. I understand that.
I got it.
This is a very different process. This would be much, 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 much further down the road.
Got it.
I would imagine, we have never had to do this since I've been here, obviously. It would be my recommendation if we got to this point, someone would be getting a letter from me saying, cease and desist, do what you're supposed to do because this is about to come your way.
Comply and or court.
But that would have to be after council gave me direction to do that.
Perfect.
So it wouldn't be out of the book.
I have questions. This goes back 6 months ago when we last talked about this, and this is where it ended before. I was asking for what the definition of riprap is.
And I still don't know because I don't know anything about seawalls. I thought the building
Our
official, I
port
remember you
authority- our
asking
port
that,
authority is-
but I thought we handled that with the building official. We didn't do that?
Define
Nope.
it. And then down
What
along
page are you on? Which page?
under seawalls,
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
under definitions. And then also tidal flood barrier and good repair, okay? From where I read this, every home on the street that I live on is in violation right now because every day, including, not every day, every high tide, every extreme high tide, like today, like we had yesterday, today, we'll have one tomorrow, the water comes over the road, so that makes it a violation. So I guess we're going to jail. So what you're saying?
Only if you ignore me for a really long time. No, you're not instantly,
So
you're
how
not
does
instantly
that,
going to
so
go to jail.
what happens to those people on that
Well,
street?
first, I don't believe this is not anticipating a high tide and it goes over. I think that the idea of
Isn't
this
that
is
what tidal water
it's coming through, right? Because it's breaking down. That's my again. I don't build seawalls,
Okay, maybe
so maybe my new expert can help with that too.
I had the word tidal on there. I kind of thought it had something to do.
Basically, your question having to do with riprap. Riprap is essentially a barrier made of rubble, rock, stone, could be concrete, but basically it's used to provide a wave attenuation or protection to the land versus what's the actual word is bulkhead. There's no such thing as a seawall. Bulkhead is the proper term used by the Army Corps of Engineer and anybody that's in the business. That's the vertical concrete structure or wood structure or whatever you decide to build it out of. Whether the water tops it or not is irrelevant as far as the physical structure itself.
For the definition, but
but
it's
as
saying
it's,
if it goes over, you're in violation.
yeah, so as it's
Yes, as it's
listed
written,
in C,
I
right
agree.
now, it doesn't
over.
it doesn't account for sea level rise.
Yeah, it's not
As it's written in here, it says
unimpeded through or over.
yeah, a tidal flood barrier is presumed to be in disrepair if it allows tidal waters to flow unimpeded through or over the barrier and onto adjacent property or public rights of way.
That would be illegal.
Right.
You couldn't make that be
according to
restriction to put on by the city.
No, I just mean I think that we could. I think going over is probably not our concern. It's not in disrepair. I don't know if we need to add a line in there that just says under normal tidal conditions.
Well, I would encourage you to come up with some criteria of what it is, because I can assure you the past building department inspectors did not understand waterborne construction. Be it in my personal situation, I put twin pilings instead of tripod. And when the building inspector came out, he had no clue that they were built appropriately by a licensed contractor. So knowing what's appropriate or not, with our building department familiar with land-based construction, sea-based is somewhat very different. So you may want to consider putting in criteria or making references to appropriate types of construction to not only educate the public, but also help our building department on what you guys believe is important.
So do you want to table it again and have a conversation with
We're gonna have to. What I think we're going to have to do is I'm going to talk to our new building official coming in that perhaps he or she may have some
Then
information.
there's other things to.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
The other question I had would be boat ramps. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is the owner of that boat ramp required to build a watertight gate or something to prevent water from coming up the boat ramp? Is Nick Spark going to build a
No,
gate?
because the top of the ramp is the same height as the seawall barrier, so you're not really dealing with water coming in any further than what the seawall would stop anyway.
Ideally.
Well, I don't know about that. It goes up the boat ramp and it goes down the street in both directions.
But only if the top of the boat ramp is lower than what the seawall would have been in the first place.
So would that be in violation?
Uh-huh.
If it
All
was.
right, so we're going to table it.
Let's table that.
I just want to say, I live on the same street that Randy lives on, and we spent like $10,000 on $10,000 on rock like 20 years ago. I can't imagine what it would cost now, but one neighbor called DEP to come out and check out, and I had a permit, and DEP said this is exactly what we want. We love this, and they said you could even go a few more feet out. But I think almost every neighbor in our whole street on the south side has this rock, very expensive. So I hope we don't have to pull it out.
No one's going to know.
No, the
Not if
verbiage
it's
in
not
there
on
for riprap just means that you're not going to get, if you have a riprap seawall or you have a natural seawall, that this does not pertain to you because that's there for erosion control. It's not there for flood barrier.
So that was just, this is it's currently written just to exclude riprap from that. That way you don't have a neighbor that calls and goes, hey, your rocks are letting water through. We have their rocks.
I'm not an attorney, but it says this definition is meant to, is not meant to include riprap.
Right.
Comma, derelict erosion control structures or permeable earthen mounds that do not provide an impermeable water barrier to tidal flooding. So it's not, that means that by definition, riprap is not a tidal flood barrier.
Right.
That's the way I interpret that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's them excluding.
So it
riprap.
means, so this is saying that our street does not have tidal flood barriers. So we're automatically in violation because it says later on that you shall maintain a tidal flood barrier. I don't know how else to read that.
We also have those ramps that come down to let water out off of the street. It's not supposed to be really a boat ramp, but
There's
it's
boat
just.
ramps. And there's also city, I don't know who installed it originally, but it could be close to 100 years ago. There are large, not culverts, but there's underground pipes that go underneath our street and go in some of our neighbors' backyards. Some of them come right up at the street, and there's ancient big valves in there that are all disintegrated probably. So the water comes up even at high tide, can come up in people's backyards. So are they in violation? Are you going to put the city?
I'm not putting, this is,
city goes to jail?
no one's going to jail. You're going to jail if you say it one more time. No one's going to jail tonight, so I'll put it that way, unless after you leave here, you all engage in something that you shouldn't be doing. No, this was just to try to address seawalls, because you have derelict seawalls in your town that need help. And people aren't voluntarily fixing them, and there's no provision in your code to allow code enforcement to deal with that. Clearly, this is not the language this board wants. And I'm not the person, and I'm not the person to answer most of your questions. The building official was, and now the new building official will be.
So we're
are my new experts.
So we're going to table it.
Once
We
again,
need- I need
yeah.
a motion to table this until the next.
It's fine. Yeah. It won't be the next meeting upon the table.
second the motion.
Hold on.
No, you
can-
made-
you can-
No, I didn't make
Oh,
a
you
motion.
did. I move that we adjourn and table this item and then we.
Let's table it first, and then you can adjourn.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, that's tabling. I'll entertain any other motions.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?